All right. Hello. We are back. How you doing? How you feeling? Welcome back to the show. Jimmy Moreland here for you, voice actor, audiobook narrator, and music producer. We had a nice stream earlier that we did on Twitch and Facebook Live, and now we're back just on Twitch and YouTube this time. I figured I didn't want to bombard my Facebook friends with too many live videos because Facebook Live is pretty insistent. They really try to promote that, which is good, but sometimes too much is too much. You know what I mean? So we're going to be doing some live audiobook narration. This is a real book that I am being paid to produce. The book, the title, I'll go ahead and we're going to be looking at a few different things here. I'll go ahead and bring this up on a different screen here. Actually, I'm not even on the screen yet. So I'll show you the listing for the book as exists on Audible, because this is book 5 in a series. Really fun series. It's a really cool, like this author. He's a new author. Put out his first book within the past year or so, and it's really, really fun stuff. So the very first book is called Eyes of the Sign, and we'll come over here so that you can see this. Eyes of the Sign is the first audiobook in this series, and I believe the first 4 should be available. Let's take a look. 1, 2, 3, 4 are all available, all narrated by me. Book 5 is what we're recording today. Book 5 is in progress. Not available. Why not? Because I'm working. Give me a second. But it's coming. And that's what we're doing today. Now, as far as what you're going to be seeing and hearing on the stream, let's go over here to Pro Tools. Pro Tools is what I work in. I don't necessarily recommend it for narrators out there. It is probably overkill for whatever it is that you're doing, but I do music production as well. So this is what I'm familiar with. This is how I am able to move as quickly as I am able. But you can absolutely do this kind of work. Even in free options, there are people out there who produce audiobooks on Audacity. That seems brutal, but it can be done. Many audiobooks have been produced in Audacity for $0. But you're going to want to invest a little bit in your tools if you really want to make your life easier. So Reaper, Studio One, Twisted Wave, Hindenburg Narrator, those are some good low-cost ways to get a DAW, a digital audio workstation, that will treat you much better. Will open up your options as far as the actual recording, lets you do punch and roll narration, saves your ass in editing because you're not limited to free roll. You can do proper punch and roll, which is what we're going to be doing today. Punch and roll. And it has better integration of plugins. So your mixing and mastering steps are going to be much easier as well. So Pro Tools, probably overkill for what you're doing. But the things that I'm doing here can all be done in any professional DAW, such as those 4 that I mentioned there. For the stream here, if you have any questions about software, gear, my booth, my microphone, Pro Tools, other stuff, the biz, as it were, feel free to ask me. I'm going to be narrating off of a tablet, which is going to be below camera. So I'm going to be staring basically right here. And on my tablet, I've got a split screen to where I can monitor Twitch chat only. I will not be monitoring YouTube chat while we do this because I've only got so much screen real estate and I still need to see the text of this book. So that's why that's going on. But if you ask me a question on Twitch, you bet your ass I am always happy for a distraction. So we've got Pro Tools here. Occasionally you may see me Alt-Tab over to this. This is my big old massive sort of productivity spreadsheet since my very first audiobook that I did. And this is number 45. This is my 45th audiobook. Since my very first one, I have been tracking how long it takes me to narrate and how long it takes me to edit every chapter. And those numbers all flow through into this spreadsheet, and there are bigger parts of the spreadsheet that I'd rather not show because there's financial stuff there. But it all flows through this spreadsheet, and this spreadsheet is actually smart. It learns as I go. So in a given book, as I read chapters, the estimates for how long it's going to take me to record future chapters gets more and more accurate in theory. It's pretty good. So I'll be tracking my time, entering my time. So this is just one of my little productivity workflows. What we measure, we improve. So that's why this will be coming up on occasion. Occasionally, I'll come into here. This is my Google Drive where I keep all of my audiobook docs. There's lots of random documents in here for every book that I've ever done. And Google Drive is cool because you can search. If I search in here, it'll search all of the subfolders. So for example, in this book, sometimes it's book 5, and sometimes I'll come across a word that's like, ooh, how do I pronounce that? And it's really useful to be able to just pop in here, search that word. If I've said that word in any of the prior 4 books, it's going to find it in the text of that. It's going to show it to me. I'll be able to find out exactly where, and I'll be able to pull up the audio then to find out exactly how I pronounced that word in a prior book to make sure that I'm consistent throughout this entire series. Little tricks that you'll pick up as you go. Another good website, not stupid old Facebook. Forvo, that's the other F. Thank you. Forvo, which stands for voiceover. This is great for general pronunciation. In this book, I'll have situations where it's more about pronunciations from like made-up words, because this is a fantasy book. I'll talk a little bit more about the book itself. But for pronunciations of real words, this is a great tool for that. So you enter in a word, like what's a word that people commonly mispronounce? Actually, there's a bunch of suggestions here. So let's say I was like Worcestershire. We're going to click it. Worcestershire. That's how I'm guessing is the proper way to say it. And the cool thing is that it shows you it's real people pronouncing it. Because sometimes, like, if you like look up a word plus the word pronunciation, you'll get a link to like a YouTube video that is an AI pronunciation of that word that invariably is wrong. These are real people who are frequently speaking into a low quality mic, but it gets the point across. And love this feature. It tells you what their accent is, because many words are pronounced differently depending on where you're from. And especially a word like Worcestershire, Americans might say it differently from, for example, a British person. So let's see. And there's a vote system. So if you see a pronunciation that has 0 upvotes versus one that has 11 upvotes, obviously, let's hear Worcestershire. How close am I?
Worcestershire.
I'm happy with that. Good stuff. So Forvo is a killer resource. Forvo is usually my first go-to if I come across a word. It also has words in all kinds of other languages. So if you find, words from whatever language, there's a good chance it's on Forvo. If not, another good resource is Youglish. Youglish is a special search engine that searches all of YouTube's closed captioning, all of the sort of transcripts that are sort of generated for YouTube videos. This can be helpful, especially for proper names. A lot of names and proper nouns won't find their way into Forvo. So Youglish is really good about like, hey, like, especially if it's like some small village in, rural Vietnam. Forvo might not have a pronunciation of that name, but if you search it in Youglish, you might find some person who who happened to visit that place and did like a fun like travel vlog. Hey, I'm here in this cool little village of blah, and here's my day. Like, here's what you do here. Perfect. And hopefully you can find good pronunciations that way. Youglish is really successful. If these don't help, Merriam-Webster is usually what I will defer to. If it's a British word, I might defer to the Oxford Dictionary website. There are good pronunciations on both of those. Wikipedia is good because a lot of words will have the IPA, the phonetic alphabet spelling, which is it's got all the weird symbols and stuff. And then there's a website called IPA Reader. You can paste in that stuff that you get from Wikipedia into this. So in fact, we've got the IPA here. So let's, and you can paste all of it, including the weird little apostrophes and stuff. Paste it all, and it's really good about interpreting it. So like, let's hear.
Worcestershire.
I don't really like that. Let's hear the British pronunciation.
Worcestershire.
Pretty good. Pretty good. This is a good last resort, especially if the thing has an entry on Wikipedia. I had some luck with like some Mayan, like stuff with like dead languages. Like sometimes you can get lucky and find like a Wikipedia or some other kind of resource that has some IPA. So I doubt we're gonna have to do all that with this book. Let's talk about this book. What's going on here? So obviously this is book 5. So spoilers for books 1 through 4 if you want to get into this thing. It's even, I don't know, there aren't. I'm trying to think through these first 4 books. Are there like spoilers as far as like, oh my God, yeah. It's not, this isn't like a mystery, a whodunit, where like if you learn whodunit, well then the whole book is spoiled. It's not like that. This is a big fantasy narrative arc. And so, yeah, some characters die. But it's not like, oh, it's shocking. This author isn't doing the George R.R. Martin, the Game of Thrones thing where they're like, he's like killing off like huge beloved characters left and right. There's drama, there's weight, there's consequence, but it's not like that. So what this story is, it's an isekai. If you don't know what isekai, the word is, you probably know the general idea of an isekai story. That's when a person gets transported by some means from the real world, the world in which you and I live in, to some kind of fantasy setting, and they've got all of their real earth, modern sensibilities and experiences to draw on, but they have to suddenly apply those to this world where physics and magic and the rules of the world aren't the same as our world here on Earth, and they have to overcome those challenges and figure out how things work and survive and thrive and so forth. This is an isekai. The main character is Eli Tall, and he has been in book 1. It sort of throws you pretty quickly right into the story. He has been implanted with a sort of computer type interface into his brain, and perhaps because of, we still don't know, but perhaps because of this, related somehow to this, he is transported into this magical world. The world of Lura is where we are. We are in book 5 of the Lurin Chronicles. So we're on the world of Lura, which is part of a massive, perhaps galaxy, perhaps universe. We don't really know if we're on a different dimension. We don't really know a whole lot. There's a lot of mystery there. But on the world of Lura, magic is a real thing, and it all sort of stems from an internal energy, which they call your omniscience. And Eli has some very useful powers that are in part granted to him by this computer interface that he has been augmented with, shall we say. And he gets into all kinds of shenanigans. But Eli is a good person. He is a good, wholesome protagonist who is a bit of a, I don't want to say he's silly, but he's definitely one to crack jokes in the face of danger and otherwise serious situations. He's very likable, very relatable, and he's really fun. And the people of this world are sort of, they're a bit set in their ways. They're a very formal people, and so obviously his natural inclination to be a bit silly can run afoul of that from time to time, and it leads to some difficulties there. So we're going to be jumping in right into chapter 6. I'm not going to give you a ton of context. I am going to be reading off this tablet, so you will not be able to read along, as it were. And my reading will be this is the point of this stream is not so that you can digest the story of this book. If that's what you're here for, you're going to be disappointed. The point of this stream is to demonstrate what the actual minute by minute, second by second craft of creating an audiobook really looks like. So I'm going to be making many mistakes. It may be frustrating to listen to. But if you're considering getting into audiobook narration, or if you have dipped your toe into it and you're trying to pick up some techniques, that's what this video is for. To show you, if you're considering it, this will show you that it's a marathon. I plan to try to narrate 2 chapters. That'll take at least 2 hours of actual narrating to narrate these 2 chapters. I will take a break after narrating the first one. During that break, to let my voice reset a little bit, to kick on the humidifier in the booth so that it doesn't continue to dry out. It's very dry up here in Maine. And during that time, I will edit some chapters, and you'll get to see what the edit process looks like for punch and roll audio. It's very fast. It's very rapid. My narration ratio, meaning how long do I spend narrating versus how much finished audio does that yield? It's about 2 to 1. If I'm doing better than 2 to 1, I'm pretty happy with that. Much worse than 2 to 1, and I start feeling like, okay, that was a bummer of a session. So this next chapter should take me around 56 minutes to narrate, and that should end up yielding, what is that, 28 math, 28. That should yield about 28 minutes of finished audio. So we're going to go ahead and do that. We've got Pro Tools here. I'm set up. I'm ready to go. You will be hearing a little bit of a chorus effect. I've just armed the track to record. And the reason you're hearing a doubling, a little micro delay, a chorus type effect, is because I'm going to be doing punch and roll recording. And that you'll see what that means. But to demonstrate, so if I wanted to read the first line of this, Eli sat down with a sigh, taking his first break in a small side room after spending several hours healing quite a few people, though he was getting used to blah, blah, blah. Oh no, I made a mistake. I hit stop. Everything up to that breath, right before that mistake, is good. So what I'm going to do, place my cursor right before that breath. I can see right here, this is the breath. I'm going to place my cursor right before that, and I'm going to hit record again, and Pro Tools is going to play 2 seconds of audio prior to where my cursor is. During that 2 seconds, I'm going to start talking along with it so that when it meets the cursor and starts actually recording a new take, I'm in the rhythm and in the tone of what I had read prior. So let's try that here. Several hours healing quite a few people. Where is it there? Several hours healing quite a few people, though he was getting used to these more strenuous sessions. So there is a nice punch and roll take there. Later when I edit, what I'll do, I'll be a little bit more zoomed in. Later when I edit, all I have to do to make this publish ready is drag this here to the beginning of that breath. See, the breath is there. There's the breath. Drag this to the beginning of the breath, and then drag the new take to the beginning of the breath. And you can hear it healing quite a few people, though he was getting used to these more... That's publish ready. Later I will use... Pro Tools has a batch fade function. It's Control F if you're in Pro Tools. And that will create, if you zoom way in here, a little micro crossfade. And that helps prevent any weird little pops or clicks that sometimes can get digitally introduced. But in most modern situations, that's not really an issue. So that, multiply that out by however long it takes to get through this chapter. That's the job. That's what we're doing here. An important point, I made a point about like, oh, I need to put my cursor before this breath. you will see my mouse, ideally throughout this next entire hour of narrating, I shouldn't touch my mouse. Obviously, if I need to take a break to like answer a question or something like that, or if something else is going on, sure, I'll touch my mouse. But if I'm actually in the act of narrating, of slogging through and putting down hours, I ain't gonna be touching my mouse. You need to get good with your hotkeys. So I will take my keyboard and I'm gonna have it on my lap, and I'm gonna be turned to where I can see my audiobook. My audio, my screen here is just in my periphery, and if I make a mistake, I'll glance over and I'll use the keyboard. I'm not shifting my overall posture at all. I'm not turning my whole body. I'm just turning my head slightly, resetting the cursor to where it needs to be. I can do fine movements like this, or I can do bigger movements. That's 1 second each. But the biggest thing that I can do is that I can hit the tab key to jump forward to the next edit point. And if your DAW doesn't have that, I'm very sorry. But the tab key to jump to the next edit point is huge, because that's what allows me to do punch and roll narration as fast as I'm able to. And you'll see exactly what we're talking about here shortly. Now, again, we're going to start from scratch there. I'm going to, I've got a timer here that I'm just going to manually punch over here. And occasionally I'll do some ice drops here. This ice drops product, a lifesaver. Just little minty drops that the main ingredient is xylitol, which helps to stimulate saliva production. So if you feel like you're getting dry mouth or something like that in your booth, they sell 50 packs of them on Amazon. They occasionally go out of stock. So if you find them for like 30 to 40 bucks, that's a good deal. Get it. If you find them for 80 to 120 bucks, wait. You don't need to be spending that much on ice drops. Content warnings for this book. I talked about on the last stream, but generally, I'm not sure exactly where we are in the story here. There's nothing super objectionable as far as my sensibilities are concerned. If you are like a fundamentalist Christian or have some other high sensitivities, maybe, because there is some mild language. I say mild, PG-13 type usage. So a standard PG-13 film can include the F word in certain contexts. And that's the kind of context we're talking about in this book. Occasionally there's an F-bomb, but it's used in a PG-13 kind of way, if that makes sense. It's not frequent. It's pretty seldom that it comes up in this book, and it's pretty sort of realistic and I would say not gratuitous. Likewise, there may be a little bit of, I don't think there's any sexual content of any kind in what we're doing here. If it starts to get, if we do get to one of those scenes, generally in these books, that's not really what this author's about. But I'm trying to think. We'll find out when we get to it. If it does get to one of those scenes and it's just like, whoa, then maybe we'll pause and take that off stream. But that's in the first 4 books. There's nothing like that. We've been building some tension between 2 of our characters, and usually everything is just sort of innuendo and suggestion to keep it fun, you know. Yeah, we're gonna go ahead and get started. It's 11:30 p.m. It's time to start working. This should be a long stream. We should be going. I mean, I've already been yapping for what, 30 minutes, 26 minutes. Should be going for at least another 2.5 hours, I would guess. Hell, maybe more. Let's find out. All right, starting with chapter 6. Chapter 6. Eli sat down with a sigh, taking his first break in a small side room after spending several hours healing quite a few people, though he was getting used to these more strenuous sessions. Between his evolved body, oversized omniscience, and ability to recharge with any nearby mana, he kept chugging along far beyond what anyone else could manage. Along the way, he did learn some new things about the Thward's physiology, like how they were not only taller than the average Lurin, but their bones were denser. The local warriors didn't seem any more proportionally muscular, though they definitely had more muscle fibers, along with more connective tissues across their skeleton. That meant their bodies were probably stronger and tougher than the other human races on this planet, even before considering their magical abilities. Klokta didn't know why, but the Thwards seemed to have more powerful gifts, and Manasite had hinted that was the case. During Eli's first trip to these mountains. However, now he had the added now he had the added benefit of using Identify on his various patients and confirmed their average levels were somewhere between 4 and 5, equating to a strong gifted among the Lurins in the Pantheon Alliance. Eli knew it was always possible those living in this town were outliers, though he didn't think that was the case, since Klokta and the Iasones family codex had both mentioned how the Thward were some of the most feared warriors on Lura, with powerful gifts that turned them into terrors on the battlefield. Of course, Eli hadn't seen any of this prowess, since he'd been a tad distracted by fighting the Holzin, but Carfer had confirmed Carfer had confirmed how they'd killed the guy with the multicolored outfit, along with nearly all of the invaders. Some of the enemy were thought to have slipped away at the end, but warriors were sweeping the streets while their scouts were on the lookout along the walls and nearby mountains. Still, the fact the Thwards had gone from being disarmed prisoners let's read this whole thing. Out along the walls and nearby mountains. Still, the fact that get a bubble. All right, good. Out along the walls and nearby mountains. Still, the fact the Thwards had gone from being disarmed prisoners kneeling on the ground to taking out their enemies within seconds of Eli's fireballs seemed pretty darned demonstrative of their effectiveness in a fight. At least, At least all of the healing eventually helped folks begin to relax. Oh my God. At least all of the healing eventually helped folks begin to relax around him, though Eli had quickly realized some taboo subjects were off limits, like when he casually mentioned the invaders to another healer who had instantly clammed up. Carfer then stepped in, blatantly redirecting their conversation toward their patients. Another time, Eli made a reference to the room with the standing stones the Thwards called the God's Altar, but after receiving a similarly negative response, he'd stuck to safer topics. Since that started earning him some slight smiles and fewer frowns from everyone, he counted that as a win for his slowly improving social skills. Carfer walked into the room, leading a pair of young men who'd put some wood platters. Let's go here. Slowly improving social skills. Carfer walked into the room, leading a pair of young men who put some platters of food and drinks down on the small round table. Eli couldn't help but focus on the bowls of hot stew and a couple of loaves of bread, which seemed like a feast right now. All the recent healing had him feeling ravenous, and his mouth was already watering in anticipation, though he still did his best to wait patiently as a pair of mugs were filled with some dark beverage, and managed not to reach for his food until after the servers were walking away. Carfer talks here. Until after the servers were walking away. When we first met, I would not have thought the two of us would ever share a meal together, Carfer said in a warmer tone, sitting down at the table. Eli nodded, already chewing on some bread that had gone a bit stale, though the inside was still nice and soft. Some sort of spread would have been good to add a little flavor, but he certainly wasn't complaining as the hungry monster in his gut began to subside. Carfer bowed his head, closing his eyes Carfer bowed his head, closing his eyes as if in silent prayer, and after several seconds he looked up with a slight smile, reaching for his own loaf of bread. Eli eyed the steaming bowl of stew, unsure what was in it, though the gray chunks weren't looking all that appetizing. The tiny pieces of pale round slices floating in the cloudy broth could have been some sort of root vegetable, and the dark leafy greens almost passed for cabbage, and at least it smelled okay, though he detected the undertone of something a little sour that had his nose wrinkling. Trying a small spoonful of the stew, Eli immediately regretted his decision as he felt something slimy in his mouth, nearly making him gag. Whatever this food was, its slightly rancid flavor definitely wasn't helping, and he was quick to swallow, not wanting to spit it all over the table. At least Guide wasn't giving him any warnings about poison or anything else, so the stew was probably edible, but he still sent a wave of healing energy through his stomach just in case, not wanting to risk the food making him sick. Eli looked at his dark beverage, catching a whiff of something musty or maybe earthy, almost buried beneath the malty scent, like someone had mixed some mushrooms into the beer. Rather than take the risk of another nasty mouthful, he opted for the safer option and tore off another chunk of bread, figuring he could always sneak a few snacks from his DS later when there wasn't an audience. Carfer was showing no issues with his stew. Carfer was showing no issues with his stew. Carfer was showing no issues with his stew, and the way he was chowing down likely meant Carfer was showing no issues with his stew, and the way he was chowing down likely meant this was his first meal in a while. The man hadn't been all that talkative, but he'd let slip a few snippets about being asleep when the others attacked, and by the time he could react, the Holzen had already cut through just about anyone unlucky enough to be near the town square, particularly those targeting those wearing armor. Edmund Maslan. Have we read this person's name before? Maslan. Was he in the last book? Who was the headman? Oh no. Gateway to Galdish? Yeah, I guess he was in this. Okay. So we got to take a moment. I've paused my timer. Maybe that's cheating, but I don't consider this to be part of the regular. So I'm opening the easily searchable. Yep, that is his name. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I want to make absolutely sure I say this correctly. It's chapter 2. So we got to find where this is in chapter 2. And it takes a little bit of trial and error, but we gotta say this right. Okay, no, it's not. Okay, so we're gonna go into here, here, into here. Get rid of Galdish. Chapter 2.
Chapter 2. Until it was banking Sharple and Shorty's expressions. Eli sighed, giving the area a quick scan, noting the skies were quickly clearing as the other flying creatures fled along with the ice serpents, apparently spooked by the hostile plate armor wasn't among them. Why is this other message from our lands? And after Truthholder explanation, his hands curling into fists. This is my post, Rafnar, and no family-killing other is going through here while I have anything. His hands, their word, respectful tone. His head.
Okay, I think we're nearly here.
They asked only for safe passage from our lands.
Here it is.
And after Truthholder Carfer confirmed their words, Headman Moslan agreed.
Moslan.
The guy in the shiny armor, apparently from our lands. And after Truthholder Carfer confirmed their words, Headman Moslan agreed.
Moslan.
The guy in the shiny armor.
We're going to leave that up for now. Moslan. Headman Moslan. So we can go just back to Pro Tools here.
Particularly targeting those wearing armor.
All right. Cool. That took a minute, but consistency from book to book. Super important. If there's one thing that listeners will ding you for in a review, it's not being consistent with accents, characterizations, and pronunciations. Got to get it right. So I do have like not really a spreadsheet, but there are Google Docs that I've got pronunciation notes. I've got a couple of, I've got some sticky notes around for names that are frequently recurring characters that I'm prone to having confusion about how to say them. Like I've got a note here that's in my line of sight for Andrea. That name can be Andrea. It can be Andrea. Andrea. Like there's so many different ways to pronounce Andrea. This particular character is Andrea. So anytime I come across that name, it's not even in this book. This is from a different book, but it's still up here. Anytime in that other book series that I come across Andrea, I know exactly how to say it. So whatever it takes, whether you've got a digital Google Doc type thing or you've got physical sticky notes, whatever it takes to get the job done right. Moving here, just real quick. I said I wouldn't respond to anything on YouTube, but I'm just checking, making sure. Top chat, can we go live chat, please? Thank you. All right, no, we're still good there, and we're schmoving. I'm double checking OBS to make sure all our levels and stuff. It would be quite silly if like I was muted the entire stream. I have done that before. But no, we appear to be good here. So cool. Let's get back to work. So we're Headman Moslan. And now where are we? Headman Moslan.
Particularly targeting
those wearing armor. Okay, here we go. Let's tap this to get me a little bit more real estate. There we go. We're going to hit save. And we're going to start our timer and start going again.
Particularly targeting those
wearing armor. Headman Moslan, the powerful thwart.
Particularly targeting those wearing
armor. Headman Moslan, the powerful thwart in charge of this settlement, had been among.
Particularly targeting those
wearing armor. Headman Moslin, the powerful thwart in charge of this settlement, had been among the many slain, and the survivors had been forced to surrender by the Blue Other's overpowering aura. As it turned out, one of the reasons the Thwards were so quickly overwhelmed was because some of their warriors had been away, including Rafnar, the tall guy with the bushy eyebrows who had been with Carfer when Eli first appeared in this town. The third Thward from that welcoming committee, Arcast, suffered his own wounds against the others, but he was already on the mend and should be up on his feet soon. Beyond the obvious catastrophe from the many deaths, losing a large portion of this town's warriors created additional problems, since these mountains were packed with predators always looking for their next meal. From overheard conversations, it seemed pretty clear folks were worried about some big, lumbering monsters who were apparently stupid enough to attack on a semi-regular basis. At least their town's walls hadn't been damaged, and there was talk about calling for aid from some nearby settlements, making this less of an immediate danger so much as one of just one more in a long list of calamities striking these people. Carfer glanced up from his stew, finally pausing after inhaling half the bowl. "Do you not enjoy Nimbalik?" he asked. Nimbalik. Sure. "Do you not enjoy Nimbalik?" he asked with a slight smile. "I grew up eating it, though I know Outlanders rarely enjoy the food's complicated flavors." "If you mean the gray stuff, then yeah, that might be too sophisticated for my palate," Eli replied, eyeing his stew. "What is it? I'm pretty sure I'd remember having something with that particular texture and taste." Chuckling, Carfer dug one out. Carfer dug out one of the gray pieces with his spoon. "This is the flesh of the Taknimba, a creature... living in large caverns below these mountains. They grow rapidly, subsisting on a diet of plants that we cannot eat, making them an excellent source of food for those who know how to prepare them properly." Carfer ate his spoonful of Taknimba, smiling and apparently enjoying the slimy thing, which he followed up with a big swig of beer before sitting back. With a happy sigh. Eli was admittedly intrigued, yet the continued scent of something sour had him deciding against a second bite. I was curious how you were keeping yourselves fed, since we didn't pass any farms during our trip south, and I wouldn't want to try hunting some of the monster we saw. He shook his head, remembering the ice serpents and their freezing breaths. "That depends on the monster," Carfer replied, his lips curling with amusement. "A Dumar or a Plesander are both regular targets for our hunting teams, providing all sorts of useful resources. And there are plenty of other beasts, though many require careful planning and special tools to take down safely." Eli didn't know what those monsters were, but that was true about much of this world. I'm sure I must sound pretty ignorant with all my questions. "Questions," he said with a self-conscious chuckle. Outside of some books and what a friend told me, you're the first Thwards I've ever met, so there's a lot I don't know about your people." Carfer had been lifting his mug of beer, but frowned and set it back down. "How could we be the first when you speak our tongue so well?" the man asked. Let's do that. But frowned and set it back down. "How could we be the first when you speak our tongue so well?" the man asked casually. "When you speak our tongue so well," the man asked casually, though his omniscience started twitching with lights. "I have a knack for picking up languages," Eli answered easily, giving the same response he'd told the Pantheon during his audience some weeks ago. "You've probably noticed my accent improving too." Carfer nodded. "I had wondered if that were the case, yet your very capacity raises many suspicions among my people, since that is something the others are known for." The man's expression turned serious as he tapped his chest. "I have had to reassure many that there is truly no taint of their insidious presence within your spirit. Yet, ever since our first meeting, some who have also questioned whether you might have a method... some have also questioned whether you might have a method of concealing your true self. I'm sure you must be thinking... Concealing your true self. I'm sure you must be thinking the same thing, Eli replied, just as seriously, having heard a few people whispering something along those lines earlier today. He didn't really understand how Carfer's abilities worked, beside him helping somehow... He didn't really understand how Carfer's abilities worked, besides helping him somehow detect the truth, but with magic involved, just about anything was possible. "How about I swear by the greater system to only tell the truth during this conversation?" Carfer's thick brows pulled together in a frown. "Assuming such oaths were possible, this would only worsen the debt between us with... This would only worsen the debt between us with the knowledge you previously offered," the man pointed out in an even... Previously offered, the man pointed out in an even tone. Even tone. "Why do this? What are you trying to gain?" Eli thought that was an excellent question, since he probably wouldn't be having... Excellent question, since he probably wouldn't be having this conversation with almost any other Thward. But according to Clacta, a truth holder like Carfa held a special place in this society. A truth holder like Carfa held a special place in this society, serving the settlement's head during official functions. Serving the settlement's head during official functions while actually owing serving the settlement's head during official functions while actually owing his personal allegiance to a small group of elders who supported and protected all of the various tribes living throughout this mountain range. Clacta didn't know much about this group besides Clacta didn't know much about this group besides them being individually powerful and highly respected, so getting on their good side seemed worth the effort. If your other If your others are members of the association, then we might have a lot to talk about, Eli admitted with a slight grin. Ultimately, I'm hoping you can get a message. Eli admitted with a slight grin. Ultimately, I'm hoping to you. Oh my God. Eli admitted. Got some bubbles. Occasionally, I like to glance at the my running timer and where I'm at. So I'm at 11:34 right now. And my timer's at 1940. So I'm doing better than 2-1 right now on my recording. So that feels good. Take a bit of a breath. Hydrate. One cool thing, a cool gift that my partner got for me a year or two ago is a, what is this thing called? I think it's just called an atomizer. It's this thing, just a little tool here. The brand is Vocal Mist. I am not sponsored. What is it called? Whatever. Vocal Mist is the brand. I think it's called an atomizer. It's basically just a tiny micro humidifier. You fill it with these little capsules of, it's basically just salt water. And then you press this button and you get nice saline water vapor to where if you're feeling like you're drying out, a few puffs on this and you're getting basically concentrated water vapor going right over your vocal folds. Drinking water, being hydrated, that's all good and well. Obviously, you should do that. But hydration is something that you need to do early and often. Once you're dehydrated, drinking water really isn't going to help your vocal folds much. This, however, puts the water right on. I mean, it's going across your vocal folds, so that's good. Also, doing like your singing straw type exercises, that can be a good way to refresh a little bit. But for me, usually the reasons I need to take breaks are related not to necessarily vocal fatigue, hydration, dry mouth. Usually I need to take breaks because of O2. My booth is pretty big as far as vocal booths go. I don't know that there are many audiobook narrators out there who are in a room as big as I am. It's very, very well treated. I wish I could like zoom out or move the camera, but the camera's pretty well locked down. But I'm in like a roughly, I'd say the interior dimensions after you account for, the big thick panels on the wall and stuff. I'd say it's like 7 foot by 8 or 9 feet. And I've got like some slanted, it's not a box, there are slants, both in the back wall and in the ceiling, because parallel surfaces are bad. But yeah, with the size of this room, that's a lot of air in this space. And so I can narrate for quite a long time and slowly be sort of using up the available oxygen in this space. And I do have fans running. I've got an exhaust and an intake, and I've got quiet run inline fans. But on anything other than the lowest setting, it's too noisy. So it's on 1 of 10. But when I edit, I'll kick that door open, or I'll just, it's kind of cold out here. We're in Maine, and we're in the middle of we just had sort of a bit of some snowfall. Got like 4 or 5 inches yesterday. So it's cold up here. So I don't know. I might kick open the door if it gets a little bit warmer. I'll keep a thermometer in here. 73 degrees right here inside the booth. So I'm feeling warm and cozy. Humidity 27%. But still, after narrating for a good hour, O2 sat in the room is definitely falling. My fans, even though I've got one pushing and one pulling, it's not recycling the air fast enough to where I feel like I'm not slowly getting apoxia. I think that's the word. Apoxia? That's the word, right? Hypoxia is probably more realistic. Apoxia is absolutely no oxygen. Hypoxia is reduced oxygen. We've got a voiceover job that just came through. Let's just take a look at it. Budget is $100. We'll bring it over here so you can see it. Budget, $100. 4 people have already responded to it. The St. Vincent thrift. Okay, it's a telephony. Thank you for calling St. Vincent de Paul Thrift Store, where your support helps us serve our community with hope and care. These are good gigs if you can get them. The phone systems are good stuff. U.S. and Canada. Where is St. Vincent de Paul? We're gonna look this up real quick. And if it's not Canada, I might stop and do this real quick. So let's see here. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? New Hampshire. And it's, well, everywhere in Hampshire is, New Hampshire is close, but it's close to the border with me here in Maine, north of Laconia. Kind of want to see what this place looks like on Street View. Any GeoGuessr players out there? Yeah, let's look at it on Street View. Would I be able to spot this as New Hampshire? If you just gave me like this on an NMPZ map, obviously with the text and stuff, you could probably get a good idea. New Hampshire does front plates? I thought New Hampshire didn't do front plates on their cars. Seems like a... but yeah, the green. Or is that a Vermont plate? Oh, man. I need to work on my US for... We need to stop before this turns into a GeoGuessr stream. I've been thinking of maybe streaming some GeoGuessr. That could be fun. I'm still learning. This stuff back here, this is very New England. I don't know that I would necessarily guess New Hampshire based on this, but this is very New England to me anyway. We see that kind of stuff up here in Maine. No witch windows. That would make me guess Vermont, though. Anyway, so yeah, this place, this establishment here, the St. Vincent de Paul, that's who is looking for this. You know what? We're gonna pause. We're gonna actually do this real quick. Let's see here. Yes, please save. We're gonna switch over to our auditions project. We're gonna press my hotkeys for that, and then for for this. Now, did it move both of them? No, it didn't. That's awesome. This one did that. Do that. There we go. Shout out to Bar Raider. Thank you for your awesome plugins. Okay. So we're going to give this a really simple, straightforward read here. Thank you for calling St. Vincent de Paul Thrift Store, where your support helps us serve our community with hope and care. Please listen closely, as our menu options have recently changed. If you know your party's extension, you may dial it at any time. Options. Press 1. Let's not read the word options. Party's extension, you may dial it at any time. Press 1 for store hours, donation guidelines, and general information. Press 2 to schedule an appointment with our Caravan Transportation Service. Press 3 to reach Customer Service Desk, the Customer Service Desk, our Caravan Transportation Service. Press 3 to reach the Customer Service Desk for assistance with scheduling furniture with our Caravan Transportation Service. Press 3 to reach the Customer Service Desk Caravan Transportation Service. Press 3 to reach the Customer Service Desk for assistance with scheduling furniture donation pickups. We're going to pick it up right here. Press 3 to reach the Customer Service Desk for assistance with scheduling furniture donation to reach the Customer Service Desk for assistance with scheduling furniture donation pickups, receiving help through our services, or for other inquiries. With scheduling furniture donation pickups, receiving help through our services, or for other inquiries. Thank you for supporting Vincent who? Services or for other inquiries. Or for other inquiries. Let's do that. With scheduling furniture donation pickups. With scheduling furniture donation pickups, receiving help through our services, or for other inquiries. Thank you for supporting St. Vincent de Paul Thrift Store. Have a wonderful day. Let's listen to the very beginning here.
Thank you for calling St. Vincent de Paul Thrift Store.
Now, most hiring decisions are made in the first 3 seconds. So it's important not to overthink and to spend, minutes and minutes and minutes on an audition. But I do want to get these first 3 seconds a little tighter here. Thank you for calling St. Vincent de Paul Thrift Store, where your support helps us serve our community with hope and care. Please listen closely and... Oh, I might have just walked on myself there. We got to re-record this one too.
Serve our community with
Hope and care. Please listen closely, as our menu options have recently changed. If you know your party's extension, you may dial it at any time. Press 1 for store. Okay, that's it. Copy our room tone here, paste it here, and now the edit's going to be super fast because we are punch and roll kings. This goes back to there. Funky transition there. There. Let's listen to that.
customer service desk for assistance.
That's fine. There we go. Boom. Bounce. This is... Cool. Accept the invite. Turn this off so I'm not echoing so much. Boom, boom. And we're just going to submit that as is. Good to go. Get the next one ready to go for the next time I open this project. That's annoying. Fit in there. All right. Oh, there's another project. What is this? Already 20 people in. Direct response read. Lots of energy, but make it believable. No, send me related samples. See, this is annoying. Full buyout in perpetuity worldwide, paid and non-made TV media for linear TV, connected TV, and all digital platforms. I don't care what the category is. I don't care what this is. $500 is a bullshit price for this. This full buyout in perpetuity worldwide. And they just want demos. Like, 36 projects posted. This client should know better. This is a bullshit project. Like, usage and budget. Like, everything. Usage, sure. Wow. Just garbage. Like, there's got to be some gatekeeping. There's got to be just something. Hey, full buyout in perpetuity, $500. Hey, like, I wish Voice 123 would just, like, there's not so much traffic coming through that there can't be just hire one person to just give these a quick glance and say, like, hey, client, you want to pay $500 for full buyout in perpetuity paid media worldwide. $500 is not an appropriate price for that. $500,000 is an appropriate price for that. $500 for full buyout in perpetuity. Get the fuck out of here. Sorry for swearing, but fuck this client. Fuck you. The hell out of here with that shit. Unbelievable. All right. Moving on. Let's get back to work. We can make this big. We can go back to Pro Tools. We're going to open our audiobook project. And we're going to get back to audiobooking. All right, and let's make Pro Tools big. And we should be good to go here. Let me double check that everything's still good. 0 frames dropped in over an hour. Hell yeah, my rig is kicking ass. All right, here we go. Where are we?
About it, Eli admitted with a slight grin.
Eli admitted with a slight grin. Hell yeah, he did. All right. Pardon me. Get this out of the way a little bit. If you're wondering why I got this wire coming down, this is the solution I've found for for my my earbud being as out of the way as possible, so I'm less likely to hit it with my hands. So especially if I put the left one in a pocket or over my shoulder, I'm very unlikely to yank or rustle, cause noise with my earbud here. I've got a nice set of cans, full coverage headphones. I've got a nice set of those that I will use in certain circumstances, but generally nowadays I've got a nice set of near field studio monitors. Nowadays it's rare actually that I reach for the cans. If I'm recording, generally I'm going to be on the one earbud in, because with the cans, even though it's a pretty good seal, I'm worried. Maybe I'm a little paranoid about bleed coming through from the headphones back into the microphone. But that's usually more of an issue when doing music, where the click track can bleed through. It just drives me crazy. But whatever. The earbud's comfortable for me, so that's what I do. Okay. Eli admitted with a slight grin. Here we go. No, here we go. Eli admitted with a slight grin. Ultimately, Eli admitted with a slight grin. Ultimately, I'm hoping you can get a message you can get. Eli admitted with a slight grin. Ultimately, I'm hoping you can get a message to the right people, letting them know. Oh my God. I'm hoping you can get a message to the right people, letting them know the truth about who I am and that I'm open to working with them in the future. Carfer's eyes narrowed. Then you have encountered the association before? He asked, the man's omniscience twinkling with activity. I'm pretty sure. Omniscience twinkling with activity. I'm pretty sure that's who they were, Eli confirmed with a humorless. I'm pretty sure that's who they were, Eli confirmed with a humorless chuckle. If you'd like to hear more, I'll need to get that oath of silence from you. Carfer slowly sat back in his chair, the man's gaze scrutinizing. What is the precise wording you are proposing for this agreement? Eli figured that was a good sign and explained the oath he'd been having everyone else swear to for a while now, though with an obvious word substitution for the oververse. The Pantheon Alliance's ruling families had been using it for centuries, which had worked pretty well for him so far, but for something this important, he also made sure to correct the pronunciation of his name, since Carfer and the other Thwards kept insisting on slamming Eli's first and last names together. By the end of the explanation, Carfer's expression had relaxed. I recognize the ancient terms that many still use to this day, the man acknowledged, a hint of amusement tugging at his lips. I accept these conditions. Eli nodded, getting up from his chair and taking a careful look around, though the closest people were some patients recovering in the room across the hall. His location felt a little exposed. His location felt a little exposed for such a sensitive conversation, but he figured this was probably the best they were going to get, and at least no one seemed to pay them any attention. Rising as well, Carfer did a good job of concealing his emotions behind a calm demeanor, though the man's aura had a nervous flicker. Eli set a hand over his heart while carefully considering his words. Contingent on your agreement, I, Eli Tall, swear by the greater system to only speak the truth until I leave this room. Carfer didn't copy the gesture, instead staring silently for a few seconds, but then he nodded. I, Carfer Partanen, swear by the greater system to never divulge Eli Tall's secrets, whether through word or action, superseding all other oaths, the Thward. All other oaths, the Thward said with careful enunciation.
superseding all other oaths, the Thward said with careful enunciation. Further, any changes to these terms can only be made with Eli Tall's verbal agreement. Eli hadn't been sure what would happen, but he was suddenly aware of something sweeping through his mind. However, the whisper of its almost imperceptible existence was nothing like the Oververse's overbearing presence, and in barely a heartbeat it faded away, leaving behind a slightly warm, tingling sensation throughout his body. Expecting a bright flash to confirm their oaths, he was left staring as the exposed skin across Carfer's face.
We're going to pick it up somewhere here.
Confirm their oaths, he was left staring as the exposed skin across Carfer's face and neck shimmered with a faint luminescence. Eli looked down, seeing the same light show on his palms and the back of his hands, which likely meant the rest of his skin was similarly shining under his clothes, though the phenomenon vanished with the tingling a second later. That, Carfer gasped, his eyes widening. The greater system, Eli finished for the man, fighting off a grin. The idea of an all-powerful entity paying attention to everything they did was still freaky, but at least they were getting some use out of the thing. He also couldn't help but be tickled by imagining Fluxy's reaction to having her theory proven correct. Carfer frowned, shaking his head. "But how is this possible?" he asked, his voice rising. "My people have prayed to the greater system to aid our plight for millennia." "Shh, not so loud," Eli shushed the man while glancing around, but no one in the nearby rooms was reacting to Carfer's words. "I don't have all the answers," Eli continued, looking back at Carfer, who seemed a little calmer, his eyes less wild. "What I can tell you is I am not from Lura, and a few months ago I ran into some crazy guy who tossed me into this world while calling its inhabitants prisoners. Since then, I've run into more of these people and was lucky enough to survive the experience." Eli casually waved a hand toward the door. "Those two wearing the multicolored clothes from earlier seemed pretty similar to them, but you're the expert, so maybe you can tell me?" Carfer followed the gesture, his frown returning. "From everything I know of the others, what you claim should not be possible. Yet here you stand, and without the taint of their touch upon your spirit." The man shook his head, seemingly perplexed by the situation. "What do you mean about this taint they leave on people?" Eli remembered others in the Pantheon Alliance using similar terminology about the darkness. He wasn't sure if there was some all-powerful malevolent force like the Lurans believed, but discounting its existence seemed short-sighted with all the other craziness happening lately.
Let's all the way back to here.
Terminology about the darkness. He wasn't sure if there was some all-powerful malevolent force like the Lurans believed, but discounting its existence seemed short-sighted with all the other craziness happening lately. "It is a sense of wrongness," Eli. Who replied? "With all the other craziness happening lately. It is a sense of wrongness," Carfer replied, his nose wrinkling with disgust. "Every person's spirit has its own purpose, and whether they walk a lit or darkened path is revealed by the choices they make in this lifetime. Yet for those fallen individuals who have chosen to give their loyalty to the others, they are marked with a residue that cannot be hidden from someone with the training to detect their insidious presence."
Carfer gave a nod toward Eli. There are some who unwittingly serve the others, and I had suspected you might be such a person. Yet after observing you for these past hours, my senses still proclaim you free of their touch. Eli grinned. I'm glad to hear it, he returned sincerely, having worried for months that there might still be some hidden connection with Lou. The guy had forcibly implanted multiple files into Guide, which had all been wiped away when Eli did a hard reset. However, he'd also immediately reinstalled the translator file and had been using it ever since, though apparently that wasn't enough to taint him in a detectable way. No offense, but you seem to be taking me coming from another world pretty well, Eli said, chuckling as he sat down at the table again. Carfer's lips twisted into a humorless smile as the man returned to his own seat. Perhaps because that is because you are not the first outworlder my people have encountered in our history. Really? Eli asked, a little perplexed. Those I've been living with acted a lot more surprised by the idea of a person coming from outside Laura. Heck, some of them still don't believe me and insist I'm somehow connected to their gods or spirits. Hardly surprising among the squatters, I keep reading the wrong name there. How connected to their gods or spirits. Hardly surprising among the squatters, Carfer. How connected to their gods or spirits. Hardly surprising among the squatters, Carfer replied with a derisive smile as he picked up his beer. They have spent centuries sifting among the remains of whatever my people left behind after we abandoned those lands long ago. Klukta had put it a lot more politely, but he described how much of the North March region had once belonged to the Thwards in the distant past, yet they'd suddenly left their homes to travel far to the north before the rise of the Riagladad Empire. Some of the Pantheon Alliance's cities, like Galdish, Lusan, and Bishal, were built right atop their ruins, though most vigorously denied this history. That viewpoint certainly matched Eli's experience, since none of these details about the Thwards were mentioned in the Iasoni family codex or the other books he'd borrowed from his friends over the last few months. He'd asked Wolf about this omission, but the man essentially waved it away, saying it was little more than a theory that many lore masters didn't believe. Eli had long ago noted the casual racism the Lorans had for the Thwards in all sorts of little ways, seemingly viewing them as barbarian giants who lived in squalor among their mountain peaks. But now it sounded like the Thwards returned this sentiment with their own brand of where am I? Jesus, okay. Peaks. Okay. Mountain peaks. But now it seemed like the Thwards returned this sentiment with their own brand of mountain peaks. But now it sounded like the Thwards returned this sentiment with their own brand of ignorance. Do outworlders Do outworlders live in other parts of Laura? Eli asked, wondering how many other facts he'd read or been told were just someone's uneducated... Outworlders live in other parts of Laura? Eli asked, wondering how many other facts he'd read or been told were just someone's uneducated opinions. Carfer grimaced, putting his... were just someone's uneducated opinions. Carver grimaced, putting down his mug before wiping his mouth with the back of a hand. The answer to such a question touches on secrets that are not mine to reveal. But I can tell you that my people have experience with some who hail from other worlds beyond our own, though all before you had the others. Oh, there we go. Hail from other worlds beyond our own, though all before you had the others' taint. The man waved a hand at Eli. The very word for outworlder. The man waved a hand at Eli. The very word for outworlder in my language is almost synonymous with those who serve the others, and given the manner in which you appeared inside Silverhome, some will continue to suspect. In which you appeared inside Silverhome, some will continue to suspect a nefarious connection, regardless of my assertions to the contrary. Yeah. Will continue to suspect a nefarious connection, regardless of my assertions to the contrary. Eli had a hard time blaming the locals after the hell they'd gone through over the last day, let alone what they'd endured from the association for centuries. So, do you think there's a chance I can talk with your superiors? I have to imagine they have all sorts of useful... There's a chance I can talk with your superiors? I have to imagine they have all sorts of useful information. There's a chance I can talk with your superiors? I have to imagine they have all sorts of useful information on the association, and I have a lot more to say as well. Carver's expression grew serious as he nodded. I will contact my masters on your behalf, though it may be some time before they craft any response. Unfortunately, that also leaves us with where... Unfortunately, that also leaves us with where you can safely reside in the meantime, as too many in Silverhome will protest your presence if it extends beyond a few days. Eli wasn't too bothered, since he was planning on returning to Galdish anyway, thinking Dara and the others might be getting worried about him at this point. I want to get back to my friends, so just tell me how many days until I should return, he said with a shrug. I'll be coming from that trail south of Minal's Redoubt, assuming they'll let me through. Minal. Minal? Was it just Minal? I said it during the last chapter. Ooh, I might have to look this up. Damn it, that sucks. I feel like I said it in the very last chapter. I know it's in here, though. Find the next, please. This is in chapter... Still in chapter 2, so, oh, wow.
Apparently, Minal didn't look happy with the explanation, his hands curling in
Wait.
fists.
Okay. I just happened to be, like, exactly on the right spot for that. Cool. Okay. Back to Pro Tools here, then.
Coming from that trail south of Minal's Redoubt, assuming they'll...
All right. Hydrate. Little atomizer. Okay. Double check, see if anyone's trying to chat on YouTube. Looks like not. That's good, because I ain't chatting back.
Coming from that trail south of Minal's Redoubt, assuming they'll let...
Quick and check.
Coming from that trail south of Minal's Redoubt, assuming they'll let...
That's actually perfect. I said it correctly. Got some bubbles. Get the bubbles out. Oh my. Oh, come on. Ugh. Jesus. Oh, Jesus, help me. All right. He said with a shrug, I'll be coming from Minal's Redoubt.
Coming from that trail south of
Minal's Redoubt. Assuming they'll let me through? Carfer raised an eyebrow, a hint of humor tugging at his lips. I suspect you must have some other mode of transport, or you would not suggest making such a long and circuitous route to the squatters' lands just to embark.
Would not suggest making such a
long and circuitous route to the squatters' lands just to embark on a
circuitous route to the squatters'
lands just to embark on a return journey. Yeah, you could say that, Eli agreed with a chuckle. I'm guessing your people have their own way of getting around in a hurry, since you have that room with the standing stones. Carfer's amusement vanished behind his stern expression. I urge you to forget that such
vanished behind his stern expression.
I urge you to forget that such a place exists until you have met with my masters, the man said without inflection. Your deeds have shown you to be someone of honor and worthy of... The man said without inflection. Your deeds have shown you to be someone of honor and worthy of knowing that some paths are especially dangerous. Come on.
Someone of honor and worthy of knowing
that some paths are especially dangerous to tread. Eli nodded. I can respect that, he replied, not about to push the touchy subject, though it made him all the more curious about blood boulders.
Not about to push the touchy
subject, though it made him all the more curious about blood boulders. He figured there had to be a connection with him appearing in only those two locations when traveling from outside Lura, and they certainly looked similar, except for the weathering on the set of standing stones in Eld Forest. Carfer continued staring at
on the set of standing stones in Eld
Forest. Carfer continued staring for a few more seconds, his stiff posture slowly relaxing again. To answer your earlier question, Protector Minal is unlikely to allow you passage through his post without orders, but that can be arranged, the truth holder said in a more professional tone. Recent events make me wary of any bold... Recent events make me wary of any bold predictions, though I feel comfortable suggesting your return through the Southern Trail by the first day of the Red Star's rise. Oh, Jesus.
Holder said in a more professional
tone. Recent events make me wary of any bold predictions, though I feel comfortable suggesting your return through the Southern Trail by the first day of the Red Star's rise in 10 weeks' time. Dang, that's longer than I'd been hoping, Eli admitted, since the Swards... since the Thwards used 12-day weeks like the Lorans, meaning it would be quite a wait. But then he didn't know whether the Thwards, that's going to be hard to say,
meaning it would be quite
the wait. But then he didn't know whether the Thwards,
the Lorans, meaning it would be
quite the wait.
The Lorans, meaning it would be
Quite a wait. But then he didn't know whether the Thwards had bursts or other ways to send messages directly to their biggest cities, and slow communication was a significant problem in the Pantheon Alliance as well. We're going to read that a little bit differently. Here's a spot. I briefly went free roll for a few seconds here, because I didn't know how... It could have taken me 20 takes to get whether the Thwards, such a tongue twister. But thankfully, on this take, there's only one dead dummy take here. So what I do in these spots where I briefly will do a long free roll, is I will stop and I will edit that in the moment. And the way I do it here, we'll do it like this. No, we'll do it the way I do it here. Here I put the edit after the breath rather than before. And that's usually enough to let me know, like, I never put the edit after the breath. the pickup after the breath rather than before. So this should let me know, but I do the extra step of going ahead and putting a crossfade. That way, when I'm editing, I know when I hit that crossfade, like, oh, this must have been a spot where I did a free roll. Because obviously during punch and roll, I would never, like, it would be impossible for there to be a crossfade unless I did something like that. So that lets me know, hey, that's what I did and why.
Problem in the Pantheon alliances.
Right, I need to read from here. So there we go. That's that brief pause, and that's why I do it. Okay, here we go.
Send messages directly to their
biggest cities, and slow communication was a significant problem in the Pantheon Alliance as well.
Send messages directly to their
biggest cities.
Messages directly to
their biggest cities, and slow communication was a significant problem in the Pantheon Alliance as well. Carfer's lips curled into a wry smile. I was merely providing a safe estimate to account for the many possible delays I may encounter in this effort. More likely, the amount of time More likely, the amount of time required will be far shorter, yet that does us little good without some way to communicate any changes to you. Fair enough, Eli chuckled, recognizing this time frame was probably the best they were going to get, and it wasn't like he'd been counting on the Thward's help. How is that probably? That's such a hard word to say.
Fair enough, Eli chuckled, recognizing this time frame was probably the best they were going.
Now let's redo that. Probably.
Fair enough,
Eli chuckled, recognizing this time frame was probably the best they were going to get, and it wasn't like he had been counting on the Thward's help. Carfer reached for his mug, but the man's hand fumbled, knocking it over and spilling beer across the table. Luckily, there wasn't too much liquid left in the cup, though the growing stink of something sour and musty mixed together was enough to have Eli scooting back in his chair, and the unpleasant odor made him glad to have skipped trying that particular flavor combination. My apologies, Carfer said, beginning to rise, only to frown and blink as his...
Apologies, Carfer said, beginning to rise. Apologies, Carfer said,
beginning to rise, only to frown and blink as his expression turned confused. What did you... the man mumbled before he suddenly collapsed, his body going limp in the chair. Alarmed, Eli engaged Hypermind, thinking they might be in...
collapsed, his body going limp in the
chair. Alarmed, Eli engaged Hypermind, thinking they might be under some new attack, but a quick glance around while toggling between Auracite and Manacite didn't reveal any obvious threats on the Manacite didn't reveal any obvious threats on this floor. The patients across the hall The patients across the hall were still lying in their beds, and the nearby storage room didn't have any occupants. He could see plenty of other people in the main room downstairs, but no one seemed suspicious or otherwise looking in his direction. Turning back to Carfer, Eli flipped over to LifeSight and was glad to see mostly healthy colors inside the man, though the slight darkening around certain portions of Carfer's brain was reminiscent of heavy sedation. It didn't seem to be enough to adversely affect the man's breathing, but anything that caused this sort of reaction could have unexpected dangers. Eli's gaze returned to the beer splashed across the table, where a small puddle was pooling around Carfer's nearly empty bowl of stew. Whether they'd both been drugged, it seemed pretty clear where the sedative had come. Whether they'd both been drugged, it seemed pretty clear where the sedative had come. Whether they'd both been drugged, it seemed pretty clear where the sedative had come from, which meant the bread might be spiked with something too. Eli felt fine but sent a healing wave through his body, figuring whatever he was dealing with, its delayed onset was a clue to its identity after
fine but sent a healing wave through
his body, figuring whatever he was dealing with, its delayed onset was a clue to its identity after encountering several substances. Its identity after encountering several substances. Identity after encountering several substances during his healing that caused similar. During his healing that caused similar effects with the proper dosage. Regardless, he also thought it was clear someone had tried drugging him, meaning it was time to get the hell out of here. Relaxing Hypermind, Eli summoned the Kruos calibration module, and a glance at the indicator confirmed the interference hadn't grown any stronger from his earlier readings. That would mean That would mean spending a little extra energy to form a gateway, but there was still enough mana in the air to make it relatively easy. Storing the calibrator away again, Eli decided against marking out the gateway's boundaries since this was only a quick trip, and the room's nearby doorframe was easily big enough to be the target for his formation point. He also really didn't like the idea of leaving any evidence for the He also didn't really like the idea of leaving any evidence for the Thwards to find, and with that in mind, he took a few seconds to store the bowls of stew, the remains of their bread, and his untouched mug in his DS. Eli triggered the necessary mental commands while simultaneously focusing on his primary target, which was a residential building in the Eosoni's skyport at Galdish. Trying to imagine the Great Hall wasn't too difficult, which was undoubtedly helped by his taking time to really get a feel for the place before leaving for his meeting with Fluxy. The big room was about the size of Eli's old high school gymnasium, though with a lower ceiling and a short platform on one end for the gifted. A couple of side doors A couple of side doors led to the restrooms and storage, while the main exit opened out for the gifted. A couple of side doors led to the restrooms and storage, while the main exit opened out to the rest of the 3-story building and its dozens of suites. Multiple banners would be on the walls, including the Eosoni's red and white checkered flag, beside several tapestries recording their family's proud history. Obviously, with Bash no longer hanging on one of those faraway walls, Eli couldn't aim for the weapon, but the wooden frame he'd left nearby with the 4 horizon stones should work just fine. As usual, he'd written Galdish, primary target, in English on the sides of the planks, making it more than unique enough to suit his needs. The mental image of the Great Hall seemed to give a trembling hiccup, and the scene was suddenly sharp in Eli's mind as if he was standing inside the rectangular wooden frame attached to the back wall. Ghostly outlines of people took shape around the room, though without enough detail to tell anyone apart. Yet the fact that he could see them at all confirmed a solid enough connection to form a stable gateway. Eli was about to trigger the activation sequence, but he hesitated. His gaze returning to Carfer, still lying slumped at the table. It seemed highly unlikely the man had known about the drugged food, and leaving him here should be safe enough, yet that was admittedly quite the assumption. After all, anyone willing to do something this crazy might be... Yet that was admittedly quite the assumption. After all, anyone willing to do something this crazy might be prepared for worse, and there'd been a few warriors like Bodonkar glaring at Carfer earlier. Sighing, Eli stepped over and picked up Carfer, settling the taller man across his shoulders in a fireman's carry. Assuming the guy was innocent, Eli could return with him soon enough, which would at least ensure Carfer's safety for the moment. There we go. All right. That should be a killer ratio. Nearly 30 minutes of audio off of 49 minutes and 39 seconds of recording time. 49, 39. There we go. And now we're going to edit. So there's that's the true marathon part of this. Oh, my back. That's the true marathon part of this, the narrating. And if you are at all any kind of a procrastinator, if you're someone who, you got your paper assignment in high school and the teacher gives you, you've got 3 weeks to write this. There's no excuse. If you waited until the night before it was due to do the project, to write the paper, whatever, then audiobooks are going to be a challenge in time management, because I've done some creative jobs where you're able to cram video editing, photo editing, things like that. Those things, you can pull an all-nighter in a lot of cases, and you can get the job done if you need to. Audiobooks, you can't. The time is the time. It takes as long as it takes, and especially on the recording side of things. You can't really, you can't really compress the time. There's no way to do it. You just have to do it. And your voice is only good for so many hours in a day. It's physically impossible for me to produce 4 finished hours in a day. Couldn't do it. My voice would give out. Would give out long before that. In order for me to consistently be able to read day after day after day, I try to limit myself to between 1 and maybe 1.5 finished hours per day. I tend not to produce more than that. If I'm producing more than that, then I start to get this slowly building vocal fatigue that after a few days of that, I'll need to take a whole day off. I take very few days off. So that's where I'm coming from. So if you're a procrastinator like me, you got to do something to right that ship. So here's what's going to happen now. We're going to edit some punch and roll. And for this, I would normally edit on my near field monitors. However, because we're streaming, all of that audio would bleed right into the microphone, and it would just be a mess. So I'm instead going to switch to the cans. I am going to open this door for a little while to try to bring the temperature down and to try to refresh some oxygen, because we are at 75 degrees in the booth, getting a little warm, and we're gonna need some oxygen in here. Ooh, boy, it's cold out there. This is effective. So we're switching over to the headphones here. Chapter 2. Whoa, that's really loud. Okay. So what you'll notice, much like with the voiceover stuff, is that I'm going to, for the most part, unless something weird comes up, I'm going to listen to none of this. I'm going to be hitting the tab key to jump forward to the next edit. I will use my mouse to fix that edit, and then I'll hit tab to jump forward to the next edit. Jump, 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 jump. That's how it's going to go. That's how quickly we're going to move through this. I am going to have on my clipboard, I've got a 2-second bit of room tone here that for when I have chapter breaks, I'll be able to paste that in. And you'll see what happens when that happens. Also, every chapter, a key component of efficiency is having repeatable processes. Because if it's repeatable, if you can automate it, great. If it's not automatable, make it repeatable to where you can get really, really fast at it. And it's not something you have to think about. For the beginnings of every chapter. In this book, every chapter just begins with chapter 1, pause, and then the body of the narration begins. There's no subheaders or anything like that. So this is really, really easy. Prior to me saying, this is me saying chapter 2, because this is chapter 2. See? Chapter 2. Prior to me saying chapter 2, I want 0.75 seconds of room tone. After I say chapter 2, I want 1.5 seconds of room tone before the rest of the audio starts. And rather than trying to like eyeball it or measure it out, I've made this a foolproof, repeatable process because I've got up here pre-cut sections of those appropriate lengths, 0.75 and 1.5. They're color-coded to make it extra foolproof, and they're on a separate track that I can basically grab that audio and drag it into place. There's a really useful hotkey combination that works in Windows. I'm sure there's an equivalent on Mac. But in all sorts of applications, you'll find that if you hold Alt while you click and drag, it will be as though you're hitting copy and paste while you do that. So to demonstrate, here's this section. I'm going to hold Alt, I'm going to click, and I'm going to drag it here. The original clip remains where it was. The new clip is right here. I do that because up front, I know I need these 2 clips. But I want to keep this 2-second clip on my clipboard. Because later, if I come across any chapter breaks, which again, I'll demonstrate what those are like. Later when I come across a chapter break, that needs to be a 2-second gap. Another repeatable thing is my zoom level. I'm at whatever. You know what? We're going to start showing and not telling. So I'm going to reset my timer here. This chapter should take approximately, we'll see. The predictomatic says 11 minutes, 20 seconds. Let's see if we can beat that. This is a long chapter. This will be a little over 30 minutes probably. But I'm going to hit start on my timer, and then I'm going to go. You're going to see how fast this goes. Save. Got to save. Start on the timer. Delete that. Delete that. Alt, click and drag. Alt, click and drag. Now I'm hitting Tab, and I'm just dragging out the various edit points here. And again, unless I find something weird, I'm not going to listen to any of this. Have faith in your process. Once you're experienced enough with punch and roll, your process should be locked down enough to where you can edit like this. Edit without listening. This I might have to listen to.
Her bright yellow jacket had been replaced by a...
Perfect. If you're doing free roll, like long roll recording, you can't do this. You have to listen to it because you have to make sure every single edit and every single transition sounds right. And that's just miserable. That takes forever. But when you record punch and roll and you've got a good read, you're going to be fine to edit without listening to stuff. And how I'm making these decisions when I'm dragging stuff out, I like to cut before the breath. It just seems to match up to my ear better. If you cut after the breath, the way you take a breath is impacted by what comes after the breath. So I like to keep the new takes breath preserved unless, again, something weird happened. So that's what you're seeing here. The new take is the breath that gets preserved. And then on a micro level, here I'm actually going to make a quick little micro edit. There's a little mouth click there that might not get caught by the RX mouth declick plugin. I'll try to make a point to occasionally glance over and see if there are any comments on Twitch. Listen to this.
Cube the size of a ring box material.
That's fine. On a micro level, how I'm making these decisions, it might not, unless you're like watching this on a really big screen, the flat line between these waveforms might look like nothing. Here's actually, I'm going to listen to this.
Antique on their wrist. My device.
There we go. But at this resolution, at this vertical scale that I've got it at, I can see little tiny blips in what otherwise looks like silence. If there are little tiny blips, that indicates that there's likely just tiny little bits of mouth noise going on. And that isn't the end of the world. Little tiny bits of mouth noise are fine because we've got a plugin that will virtually eliminate all of that. It's quite effective. But if I see something that's like, if you can clear it out, by all means, clear it out. Listen to this.
Sparkling water and a few different tea.
That's fine. I'm wondering if I actually edit any slower while I'm streaming, because I'm yapping the whole time, whereas like if I'm not streaming, I'm editing. I'm just like zombie dead stare into the monitor while I edit. But at least this keeps me alert. I'll often get like full on, what is that, highway hypnosis. I'll be like I've like pretty much fallen asleep while editing before, because you're just fixed at the same physical place on the monitor, and like you're just doing basically the same motion over and over. I'm hitting tab and I'm clicking and dragging. Oops, until you do that. Hitting tab, clicking and dragging. It's just the same repetitive motion over and over. Clean that up there. Yeah, this is it. So, do you still want to be an audiobook narrator? There's a great video out there. I can't remember who did it. It might be Johnny Heller or one of those great teachers. There's a great video out there that people usually will post when someone's like, hey, like, I think I want to do this. Okay, watch this. It's a video where basically the premise is like, okay, you think people have told you you have a nice voice. Maybe you've got kids and you like to read to them. Or you like public speaking or something like that. And so you think, oh yeah, hold on.
100 sheets of spell paper, and I have to
so yeah, like I'd be great at audiobooks. Okay. All of those are different from what the actual job is. And so the challenge that's put to you by this video, so you want to be an audiobook narrator video, is basically, okay, take a book, go sit in a closet, and read it out loud in a dark closet for 2 hours every day for the next week. Whether you want to or not, whether you feel up to it or not, like, do that. And that's like the very base level, like, do you have the stamina, not aptitude, but do you have the social wiring to do something like this? I gotta hear this.
Versions are available, but I was assured that.
Good. And then this I'll have to listen to.
But I was assured that such would necessitate specialized.
Let's hear what the original sounds like.
Assured that such would necessitate specialized.
That sounds better. Couple of weird spots there. What that video doesn't account for is like, okay, so say you've done the reading part, and it's fine. Well, here's all the other stuff. Can you suffer through editing your own work? Can you do all the tech, can you constantly keep an ear out while you're recording for any extraneous noises that might ruin your recording? Do you even have a space that can be made quiet enough from external noises? This is going to be weird. Why did I let this come through like that? This might be where it is.
Knowledge tome or something similar.
Nope. Or something. Maybe we do it here.
Knowledge tome or something.
No. Oh, this sucks. Okay. Here? This sucks.
Or something similar for inscribing.
No, we're going to have to do something like mid-syllable. This sucks. I can't believe I did this. Surely not here.
Knowledge tome or something similar.
We'll do it during this S. Long fade.
Knowledge tome or something similar for.
There we go. Yikes. Yikes, Jimmy. Okay. Now we're here. Yeah, the point about space. You know, I know that there are loads of voice actors in New York that if you're living in a New York apartment, that's going to be hard.
Be aware, but human brain.
That's going to be hard to make that an appropriate environment to narrate in. Any apartment's going to be hard because you can't do any, serious modifications that involve the walls or ceiling. Not to say that home ownership is a prerequisite. I have recorded many audiobooks in a couple of downtown Houston apartments. Not downtown, but inside the loop. And in those cases, I had to work around traffic noise. I had to really keep an ear out.
Only flashing through him at once again feel.
I had to keep an ear out, especially living near the med center. Those medevac helicopters, holy! I just, obviously that just totally would interrupt production. So you got to be aware enough for those kinds of things. And basically, there are times you just can't record if you're in that kind of situation. But apartments can be made to work, but you're going to have to work for it, Being a homeowner makes life easier. I highly suggest buying a 200-year-old house in Maine, because that will solve all of your problems. I think that looks like a sinus click. Let's see here.
And Eli wondered what it would be like to hold this amazing.
Good. Eli is pining after Fluxy. Just you wait. Someday, these two lovers are going to, someday.
My apologies as well, Eli. You have.
Yeah, that's fine. A little sinus click there, but hopefully the D-click will catch that. If not, oh well. We go all the way to the end here with that, I think. Actually, we're going to check that.
Relatively limited amount of time, Fluxy remarked, walking over and taking.
Ooh, we're going to shorten that, actually.
In a relatively limited amount of time, Fluxy remarked, walking over.
Yep, okay. Yep. Nope. What are those Muppets called? They're awesome. Whatever they're called. Glancing down at the timer. We're at 11 minutes, so we should be quite near the end of this chapter. Delete that little noise there. Probably going to be a little slower than normal because of me yapping to you on the stream here. And also had quite a few little quirky spots that we had to listen to. But look at that. Okay. Hit our automatic crossfades. Save. and bounce this out. This is chapter 2. It's going into the correct folder. We're going to bounce. Come back to our nice big sheet here, and we're going to mark down for the edit that was 1140. Pretty close. The prediction was 1120. We came in at 1140. Email. We've got an invitation to a commercial. Please be a little more specific. Let's view the project. Okay. All right. Maybe that's worth doing. I'm not going to interrupt myself right now. We're moving. We're also going to mark down the finished time of this chapter, which was 34:44. Cool. So my ratio, this is my, wait. Hello? Hello? Oh. There we go. My total per finished hour, my working ratio, accounting for recording time and edit time, 2.18. Now, that doesn't account for all sorts of things. It doesn't account for my pre-read of the book. It doesn't account for the emails that I've sent back and forth with the rights holder. It doesn't account for me pausing to look up pronunciations. So anytime someone tells you their ratio, like, take it with a grain of salt. There's probably a lot of things that aren't being included in there. And if you're just starting out, a good rule of thumb for what ratio to plan for yourself, for like, oh my God, how much work is it going to take me to produce this 5-hour audiobook? A ratio to plug in is between 6 and 10 to 1. So that 5-hour audiobook is going to take you between 30 and 50 hours of work. And that should be accounting for the pre-read. You got to pre-read the book. And it should be accounting for you just stumbling around and figuring things out. Because even if you do voiceover and you think you've got a handle on punch and roll because you do some voiceover, unless you're doing a ton of long-form voiceover like e-learning, maybe audio description, it's not really anything that would come close to comparing to audiobook work. That first audiobook is going to be like a revelation in all the ways that you lack efficiency in your process. So streamlining your process, hugely important, so that you can get your ratios down to where it actually makes sense for you to try to do this and make a living. Audiobooks are not my sole source of income. It is the single largest source of income for me. It's pretty much neck and neck with music, actually. Though most of that music income happens during like the 10 weeks of like peak tourist season up here in Maine. And then beyond that, voiceover work, podcast editing, random photo or video gigs that I'll get sort of come into play. But yeah, audiobooks are my main source of income, and it could be even more so if I was a little bit more diligent. I could probably do more audiobooks. I could probably do the audiobooks that I get. I could probably do them faster, but I work at a pace that keeps my voice healthy. I make enough money to where I'm happy. I'm not greedy. I don't live an expensive lifestyle. I don't have any expensive habits except for music. I just bought a third pedal steel guitar. What the hell is wrong with me? But audiobooks affords me the kind of lifestyle to where I can pay my mortgage on this old house. I pay all my bills, and it works. And it can work for you. It can work for you too. So I've got another 50 minutes that I want to read tonight. And that will put me past 2 a.m. And that's fine. We're in full goblin nocturnal gremlin mode here. here at the old Veteran Audio Studios here. So I'm wondering if I want to do another. We're going to edit one more chapter. No. We're going to code yellow right now. We'll be back momentarily from a code yellow. If you don't know what it is, think about it. We're going to take a code yellow, come back. We're going to edit one more chapter. I've got to climb a set of stairs to get up here into the studio. So I like to make sure I have some other period of activity before I jump right into narrating, just so that my heart rate can come back down a little bit, catch my breath or whatever. So we'll code yellow. We'll come and edit chapter 3. And then we will narrate chapter 7. Typically, I like to try to keep my edits pretty close. Falling way behind where I'm trying to edit an entire book that has been fully recorded, that's miserable. That's no fun. So keeping pretty close within a couple chapters is a good way to work. And in fact, sort of going ping-ponging, record for an hour, edit for 15 minutes, repeat ad nauseum is a pretty good way to work if that works for your workflow. I know that doesn't work for everybody, but that's what we're going to do here. We're going to code yellow, come back, edit a chapter, then we're going to keep going. So in case, let me check if my friends on YouTube are chatting. No one's chatting. That's fine. We're going to put you on the brief hold while we code yellow. Here goes. Here we go. BRB. All right. Woo. Code yellow successfully dealt with. Now. Ooh. Like I said, loads and loads of snow out there right now up here in Maine. And beautiful thing about working from home, being your own boss, all that, you set the dress code. So, yeah, up here, a business up top. But I'm in pajamas underneath to include my little house slipper thingies. And I was just stepping through, in some spaces, like nearly foot deep snow in my little slippy slips. I got a load of snow in my slippers. And so as time goes on for the rest of the stream, I'm going to be more and more miserable as that snow seeps deep into my footsies. Got to get some calories in me here, so we're going to do a little protein. How's everybody's New Year's resolutions going? We're about 5 weeks in. Are you doing okay? Have you been hitting the gym? Since December or thereabouts. I'm down 42 pounds, my friend. 42 pounds. Feel good. Hope you're doing well on your resolutions. All right, I'm gonna keep sipping on this. Actually, I want to finish this before I start editing this next chapter. So I'll go ahead and we'll bring up Positron and upload chapter 2 to it. Positron is super cool. This is how I proof my books. Positron is it's a service that essentially what it does is you upload the text, you upload your audio, and it listens to the audio and reads the text and compares the two. And anytime there's a discrepancy, an error, it spits out a report, and it's a really useful and easy to work with report that lets you go like, okay, here are all the places that I made mistakes, where what I said is not what is actually written, which happens far more often than you might think. Simple things like swapping word order around, just saying the wrong word entirely happens quite a bit. And having a tool that will quickly, easily, and cost-effectively do that for you is absolutely huge. So let's go into the project here. Let's go ahead and bring you onto the share screen. So I'm dropping chapter 2 in here. You might be wondering, well, Jimmy, what about chapter 1? Did you not prep that? You'll notice up here, this is 045. It's because it's my 45th audiobook. But here it's version 2. Because the author, after I recorded chapter 1, he made some updates throughout the book and wanted to share with me an updated manuscript to make sure that we were on the same page, as it were. And I did double check. He made no changes to chapter 1. So chapter 1 is set in stone. It's good to go. Chapter 2 forward, though, I want to make sure that I'm on the correct manuscript. So I created a new project and uploaded the new manuscript. You can't update an existing project with a new manuscript for reasons that with some thought are pretty obvious, like that would like potentially wreck like everything. So simple solution, just make a new project, call it a version 2 or a whatever, and just start uploading your new chapters into that one. You don't want to have it like reanalyze stuff that has already been deemed good to go, because you'll basically be paying for that processing twice. And that's not good. Some people don't like the taste of muscle milk. I think it's the best. I think it's the best tasting like protein anything on the market. If they could make a bar that had similar macronutrients as any of the muscle milk shakes, that would be like, that would be 2 out of my 3 meals a day, you know. But for some reason, when someone makes a bar, they just can't help but like, well, we got to put 30 grams of sugar in this, obviously. It's like, what the hell? You can make a shake with like killer macronutrients, but you can't make a bar. No one can do it. I don't know why. This is now a fitness chat stream, I guess. All right. We're going to edit. We've got, if you see what appears to be wisps of smoke puffing up behind me, I've got a humidifier that when I'm not recording, I'll kick the humidifier on to try to make this place a little bit more friendly to the voice here. So back to Pro Tools. Chapter 2 is done. Chapter 3. Let's move this down. Chapter 3. Let's make you big. Here's our first cut. We're going to save. I'm going to make sure that this is still on our clipboard. All right. I'm going to go start our timer and start editing. Sorry. Here we go. Timer has started. Making our first 2 cuts just like last time, dragging in our room tone, and now it's tab and drag, tab and drag. This chapter should be a bit shorter. I think this one was like, ooh, what is this noise?
Though he hadn't been given the opportunity.
That's fine. It's not so loud that it's going to do anything super wacky, but listening to that real quick made me just had to listen to make sure it wasn't doing something completely crazy to the compressor. We might have to do this. I don't like this. Let's.
Fell's escort led him deeper into the administrative section of a calm exterior, having never been.
That's fine. Okay. For some reason, whatever this day was, I was having a lot of issues getting clean takes. My God, look at all these.
Slowed to a stop in front of a metal door that looked like many others they'd packed.
Yeah, it's all fine. You know, ideally, if I'm well rested, well hydrated, I haven't already been in the booth for many, many, many hours by the time I actually hit record. Ideally, like, I'm not having to listen to so many spots because my punch and roll technique is nice and clean. I'm not having to do any weird stuff, but sometimes things aren't perfect, you know? It's okay. Are you all excited for Civilization 7? Oh my God. I know everybody's playing Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 right now, which is a terrible title for a video game, but I really enjoyed the first one. Oh, Jesus, what's happening here? Let's listen.
How understandably cautious, though.
That's good. I say I enjoyed the first one. The first one, like, the combat in that game is brutal. And I'm busy. I don't have time. It's not full on like Dark Souls, Elden Ring, Bloodborne. It's not like that level of difficult, but it's just, it got in the way of what was just a really cool story, really cool world, like just cool stuff going on in the game. But the combat was just like, oh my God, you're just getting slaughtered every time because you haven't like perfectly read the frame perfect tells, and like you were 2 frames late for the parry. Like I was like, you know what? I'm employed. I'm too busy to worry about this, and so I used cheats. Oh yeah, I used cheats. Just to make the game a little bit more forgiving. I didn't go like fully nuts and like made myself like actually invincible and like 1-hit kills and infinite money. I didn't go like that nuts. I just used some cheats just to give myself enough of an edge in combat that I felt more like I was playing not Dynasty Warriors, because that's that's ridiculous. You're like a superhero in that. I don't know. it just felt a lot more balanced with some cheats because yeah, but supposedly they have tweaked the combat in the second one to make it more I don't know, friendly to employed people. But we'll see. But I don't know when I'm actually going to get to play that because I'm busy enough as it is. My Steam games queue is enormous as it is. Like the next game I'm actually like super excited about playing is Civilization 7. Hold on.
Using the association's resources.
See what it sounds like with a crossfade.
Using the association's resource.
That sounds fine. You know, Civilization 7 is going to take up a lot of my life. I was hoping to get this book done by the time that game came out, but the game comes out in, I guess now that we're past midnight, it's now 3 days. So yeah, this book is not going to be done by then, which is really too bad. But that means like I have to force myself to basically just not start playing Civilization until this book is done, because if I start a game, that one more turn bug is going to get deep under my skin, and pretty soon you're having an uncomfortable conversation with a rights holder about whether your book's going to be delivered on time at all, and that's not a fun place to be. If you've got a legitimate, illness or family emergency situation, fine. Have those conversations early. Let them know what to expect. But I can't just be like, hey, Civilization 7's coming out, and I'm going to play that for 20 hours a day until someone like sends the police to do a wellness check on me. Here's a chapter break. That's where me pasting the what I've got on my clipboard there comes in handy. Oops. Yeah. Civilization. I'm excited. Apparently they did like a day one patch, and they're talking about like already taking player feedback into account for like future patches and stuff. Like, I know the Civ games kind of have a reputation for being a bit unpolished on day one, but like it's probably the game franchise in which I have the most lifetime hours. Gonna listen to this.
Caves beneath their mountains.
Still gonna
Caves beneath their mountains.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I probably have more lifetime hours in that franchise than any other, and that includes like Mario. That includes Zelda. That includes, what other game franchises do I have a ton of hours in? Final Fantasy. Ooh, that's probably close. It's probably a toss-up between Final Fantasy and Civilization as far as just total hours I've sunk into the franchise since the 90s. I remember playing Civ 1, MS-DOS, bring up that command prompt, cd / civ.exe, enter. That was the ritual after school every day. Got to play some Civ. One more turn. Listen to this.
Low on certain goods.
It's fine. And oh man, the last 3 games, the narrators of the games have been Leonard Nimoy, then Liam Neeson, then Sean Bean. Amazing. Like, what? Because 3 didn't have a narrator. I don't think 3 had any voice lines. Got to hear this.
Bed's green coverlet. He took a seat.
Yeah, that sounds fine. So yeah, 3 didn't have a narrator, as far as I recall. But then like 4, 5, and 6, like what a unbelievable powerhouse of narrators. Leonard Nimoy.
Performing as expected.
Leonard Nimoy, Liam Neeson, Sean Bean, and we're going to have to listen to this. Hold on. Oh wow, where is this going to go? That looks like here and here?
Was keeping them under the verses
Nope.
was keeping them under the oververses.
Okay. We've got
Was keeping them under the oververse.
Okay, so we're going to put that here, and we're going to do a crossfade and listen.
Was keeping them under the oververse.
Perfect. A little bit of a noisy. That's all right. EQ will take care of that. So, amazing narrators for 4, 5, and 6. Who, might you ask, is the narrator for 7?
Had the tertiary support system.
Gwendolyn Christie. Hell yeah. Let me think, who the hell is that? Game of Thrones. So another Game of Thrones actor, because we had Sean Bean, Ned Stark.
Calculations hadn't accounted for Pija.
Gwendolyn Christie is Brienne of Tarth. Just so excited to hear her take over the narrator role for the series. Like, super cool. She's a badass.
The chances were low. His continued free.
Cool that, here we go. Very cool that the job isn't like purely the purview, the domain of white guys. Like, all right, that's chapter 3. But yeah, Gwendolyn Christie, gonna be super awesome. I'm super excited to hear her tell me about the tech I've just unlocked. What I've just researched. All right. So it's chapter 3 done, and we'll go ahead and upload it to the old positron here. Here we are, chapter 3. Drag you into positron, and while that's going, we're going to mark down our time here. That was, slow, 10:02. That probably means this is going to be pretty bad too. It is 22:12. Ooh, look at that ratio, 2.65. That's brutal. So I think my inclination was right, that this was probably a late night recording where I had been in here for 8 hours already, and my O2 was running out in the booth. It's a real thing, real problem. And we're going to push it a little bit again by recording another chapter here at 1:36 in the a.m. on the East Coast. Oh man, it's my back that starts hurting. That's one of the real problems of doing marathon sessions. Not that that's what this is, but tomorrow I'll try to get a couple of chapters. I'd like to get. Let's see here. Tomorrow's Saturday. I should be able to get 3 chapters done tomorrow. That would be awesome. So yeah, let's get this ready to roll. Move that down. Chapter 7. We can go ahead and close that. This is all good. Let's see if my friends are goobers. All right. Everything is good to go here. Making sure we're still good on the live stream. We dropped a few frames at some point. I wonder when that was. Maybe during rendering or something. Okay. All right. We'll make sure our doors shut all the way. There we go. We're going to turn off our trusty humidifier. Maybe get a little extra shot of this. Scroll up. All right. Timer's reset. Arm the track to record. We should be good to go. Check 1, 2. And there it is. That's what you like to see. All right. Make sure your mustache is out of the way. Everybody. All right. This chapter should go for about 50 minutes. 50 minutes. So the stream's already been going for what? 2 hours 30. So this will put us near to the 3.5 hour mark on the stream. And we'll probably cut it right when I'm done. Or things will fall apart and I'll just like lose the ability to say another word and we'll cut it short. But I'd very much like to get this chapter done. And doing the stream helps me stay on task. Even though I yap off topic pretty constantly. So here we go. Wait, I'm looking at a character's name here. Who is this Mary? Let's double check. Do we know Mary? Was Mary in the last book? Mary. No, not merit, not mesmerized, not shimmering. Thankfully, Mary has been... Mary is the... Okay. Mary is... Right, but do we know... Shimmering, 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 hammering. Okay. So we haven't heard from Mary yet. We just know that Mary is going to be Dara's assistant. Mary is likely a Sagruda, I would guess. Cool. What's a Sagruda? Well, listen along and you might find out. Or just listen to the 4 prior audiobooks and you'll find out. All right, here we go. Chapter 7. Dara was standing with her guards in the Iasoni's grand hall, doing her best to put on a good face in the midst of this boring party. Ordinarily, she avoided these sorts of gatherings for the unmarried women meeting with potential suitors, but staying in Galdish for so long had drawn increasing pressure from many in her family, and she'd finally given in by attending. Sadly, despite Dara's cold expression and repeated rebuffs, men continued approaching her to join them in one of the formal dances taking place near the center of the room. However, while her family might require her participation in this event, she would not put on some facade or pretend to be enjoying herself for the benefit of those in this room. "Gifted Mary," Jiro whispered from nearby. Dara glanced over, feeling her mood lighten when she saw her friend... let's come back to here. For the benefit of those in this room. "Gifted Mary," Jiro whispered from nearby. Dara glanced over, feeling her mood lighten when she saw her friend approaching through the crowd of revelers, wearing a lovely green and white dress that accentuated Mary's hips to good effect. The woman's demure choice not to reveal any... Accentuated Mary's hips to good effect. The woman's demure choice to not reveal any glances at the body beneath would be considered a bit out of fashion these days, yet Dara had picked something similarly considered a bit out of fashion these days. Yet Dara had picked something similarly concealing in shades of gray and red, having no wish to put on a display for any of the men here. "Gifted Duralis, I see your strength," Mary said, giving a slight bow as if they were at an outer family function. "Who did I offend this time?" Dara asked, guessing that was the reason for her friend's particular greeting. It seemed inevitable for one of the people standing along the room's walls to get upset by her snubbing their sons, brothers, nephews, or whomever they'd brought to this gathering. Mary laughed while holding up a green silk fan in front of her lips, like many of the other women did while talking among their own groups of friends around the room. For the men who wished some attempt at concealing their conversations, or... Okay, we did a small bit of long roll here, so we got to quickly fix that. we might actually be fine doing this. Let's listen.
Dara, a bit out of fashion these days. Yet Dara had picked something similar.
We're gonna, nasty. Do that and that. Okay, back to it. And also, bubble, bubble, bubble. That was all one take, right? Prior to that? Oh, one little. Pretty good. Obviously sustainable. We're going to keep up this level of
Attempt at concealing their conversations, or
oh my god. Okay. Say it again.
attempt at concealing their
Conversations, the more influential or powerful
attempt at concealing
their conversations, the more influential or powerful usually had a circle of well-wishers to keep people at a distance.
attempt at concealing their conversations.
The more influential or powerful usually had a circle of well-wishers to keep people at a distance, and for the rest, a well-placed cup or simply a hand across the mouth sufficed for propriety's sake. I am certain a complaint or two will be
The mouth sufficed for propriety's
sake. I am certain a complaint or two will be made by day's end, yet that is far from any worry of mine, Mary replied, the corner of her eyes crinkling with amusement above the green fan. Why are you not enjoying yourself? Did someone utter words out of turn? Dara gave her own fan a practiced flick, extending the dark red fabric before holding it up across her mouth. As you might imagine, I would prefer to be nearly anywhere but here, she replied, glancing toward the many pairs performing one of the more intricate dances that involved switching partners according to the song's beat. Even among a crowd of individuals who had trained for years to attend these sorts of events, people made mistakes, and an inattentive person could easily slip up, which would become readily apparent when they suddenly found themselves alone or with one too many partners. Of course, how someone then reacted to such an embarrassing situation would be another among the countless ways they were being measured by their family's many watchful eyes. Have you found no likely prospects? Mary asked, turning to stand beside Dara as they looked out on the dance floor. I thought Taysir had his gaze on you, and then... I thought Taysir had his gaze on you, and I have heard Arnal... Arnal speak of his admiration for your beauty. Dara shook her head. Taysir would sleep with anything that smiled his way, she returned. Taysir would sleep with anything that smiled his way, she returned, not even glancing toward the man who was likely still staring at her from across the room. Arnal seems nice enough, yet... Arnal seems nice enough, yet he could put even the eternal watchkeeper to sleep with the useless drivel he spouts. Mary tittered behind her fan. Who mentioned anything about speaking to either of them? She asked, the woman's voice heavy with innuendo. Either of them, she asked, the woman's voice heavy with innuendo. Dara couldn't help but smile at the absurdity of the idea. I know a few... Wait, hold on. I have to make sure the correct person is speaking here. Okay, got it. But smile at the absurdity of the idea. I know a few warriors I would choose to enjoy such... But smile at the absurdity of the idea. I know a few warriors I would choose to enjoy such activities with first, but sadly, they are not here, she said, smirking at her friend. Besides, I have an experienced Mesnarlin who can take care of my needs when necessary. Mary's eyebrows rose. If that is... Mary's eyebrows rose. If that is the one I recommended, then I can well understand your feelings on the matter, she remarked, leaning a little closer with a mischievous look. That man has the strongest hands and the most talented equipment, yes? Dara gasped in shock. Mary! What? Have you not noticed? Mary asked, blinking with big eyes and playing up the innocent woman many mistook her for. A Miss Narlin of such caliber is not someone to take lightly, so I would hope you have already experienced at least one of Master Gwynwald's more invigorating sessions, she added with a throaty chuckle. Dara didn't bother replying to that, not wanting to be reminded of her last time with the skilled Miss Narlin, especially when their next appointment wasn't for days. Are there no prospects here for you? Mary gave a slight shrug, though the woman's eyes lost a little of their merriment. Perhaps a few that are interesting, but I attended more for the dancing and spending time with friends like you than finding a proper suitor. Dara nodded, knowing the loss of Mary's husband was still fresh to the other woman, regardless of the time that had passed since his death. A twitch of awareness in the back of Dara's mind had her blinking in surprise. Gonna make a little pause for that. Of the time that had passed since his death. Little pop there. Time that had passed since his death. A twitch of awareness in the back of Dara's mind had her blinking in surprise, though her reaction was swift. Dara's mind had her blinking in surprise, though her reaction was swiftly hidden behind a smile. Still, she was also certain Eli had just returned to Lura, yet the feeling was remote, much like the last time when he appeared in the middle of a Thward settlement, thousands of kilometers away. Mary must have sensed something. Thousands of kilometers away. Mary must have sensed something as she turned toward Dara with an inquisitive look. Is anything wrong? Dara hadn't told many people about her life oath to Eli and how she could sometimes sense the man's emotions, yet Mary was among those trusted few. But then saying too much about it here seemed foolish, regardless of how unlikely being overheard was, with their guards keeping others out of earshot. We might have another delay, Dara replied, her words serious, and she nodded at the other woman's questioning look. Just now, and similar to the previous time. Mary's eyes flashed with surprised recognition, but her expression quickly settled as the woman gave a slight nod. Perhaps we depart after the spirit's offerings? We depart after the spirit's offerings? She suggested. We depart after the spirit's offerings? She suggested, her gaze darting toward the dance floor. What? We depart after the spirit's offerings? She suggested, her gaze darting toward the dance floor. Dara would have preferred to leave immediately, but such an early exit would draw notice they didn't want, especially when far too many of the eyes in this room belonged to those not friendly to Eli. Seeing as she was also certain the man wasn't nearby, a small delay shouldn't matter. Accepting the inevitable, Dara put on her best face as the party continued. She even shared a dance with Arnal that seemed to calm... She even shared a dance with Arnal that seemed to calm some of the frowns from the older family members observing the festivities, and the man proved to be quite good on his feet. Yet the short conversation the two of them shared afterward confirmed how few thoughts or worries troubled his mind. To give Arnal credit, he had at least some thoughts or worries troubled his mind. To give Arnal credit, he had at least some thoughts or worries troubled his mind. Thoughts or worries troubled his mind. To give Arnal credit, oh my God. Thoughts or worries troubled his mind. To give Arnal credit, he had at least some training and thoughts or worries troubled his mind. To give Arnal credit, he had at least some training and might be able to match Dara in the circle, unlike many of the other unmarried men in the ruling families. A woman looking for someone with any sort of martial background had very few options, and the
racial background had very
few options, and the ongoing Southerner invasion only made the situation worse. The number of
Asian only made the situation
worse. The number of available
made the situation
worse. The number of available suitors was rapidly dwindling, with some women and their relatives becoming more and more willing to negotiate less suitable pairings. However, Dara had no interest in such entanglements at the moment. She could put up with these events for the moment. Negotiate less suitable pairings. However, Dara had no interest in such entanglements at the moment. She could put up with these events for the few hours required to keep the peace with certain relatives, but she wasn't about to settle for any of the soft-handed imbeciles being paraded around the room. Almost 2 hours after sensing Almost 2 hours after sensing Eli's return, Dara was finally able to depart without drawing undue notice, and Mary came along, their guards forming a well-practiced square of protection around them. The additional guards in gray armor awaiting them in the Iasoni's rest garracks. We're pausing because I need to make a note. Something that I do, which is not a requirement, and it's not something that all narrators do, but something that I do, is I keep basically a running list of any typos or like minor errors, things that I find in the document as I go through. Many of these are revealed through the proofing process. And when I say proofing, I mean like my audiobook proofing process. Because sometimes my brain will just make the correction as I'm narrating, but then Positron will be like, oh, you didn't read this thing. And it's like, oh, because my brain corrected that thing. But that is an error. Let's make sure the author knows about it. And sometimes, if my pre-read is close enough, I'll catch errors there. And then sometimes I'll catch things as I'm actually narrating. So right now, I just caught a very, very minor error that the author will appreciate me catching and passing along. All right. Really starting to feel some vocal fatigue right now. It's because all the yapping I've been doing in addition to narrating. And that's another ice drop thing killed, but I've got a whole 50-pack. Watcha! Oh, yes. Oh, yes, indeed. Good stuff. Get the inevitable bubbles out of here. Let's listen to where we are.
Well-practiced square of protection around them.
Yeah, we'll start there. I'm reading at an insane clip right now. I'm like 1.5 to 1 right now. That's insane. Clearly sustainable. Watch me stumble on one sentence for 5 minutes now. Okay. Where am I? Well-practiced square of protection around them. All right, here we go.
Well-practiced square of protection
around them. The additional guards in gray armor awaiting them in the Iasoni's rest garrison.
Practiced square of protection
around them. The additional guards in gray armor awaiting them in the Iasoni Rest's guest barracks protected the two women even better as the enlarged group stepped out into the streets, their senses searching for anything amiss. During their short Their senses searching for anything amiss. During their short journey, Dara pulled out her Farspeak to inform her father about the situation, as she hadn't wanted to risk it. Speak to inform her father about the situation, as she hadn't wanted to risk use. Oh my God! To inform her father about the situation, as she hadn't wanted to inform her father about the situation, as she hadn't wanted to risk using it within her family's rest, since proximity to other
to risk using it within her
family's rest, since proximity to other devices might allow someone to snoop on their conversation. Regardless, her father confirmed he would inform Diadar Arik. Oh my God. Allow someone to snoop on their conversation. Regardless, her father confirmed he would inform Diadar Arik, even though there wasn't much they could do until they had a more definitive idea of Eli's location. Dara's party had no issues reaching definitive idea of Eli's location. Dara's party had no issues reaching Eli's green-walled home a few blocks away, yet they didn't stay long. Dara and Mary took the time to change into more comfortable clothes while their guards got organized for a renewed trip. Oh no. And Mary took the time to change into more comfortable clothes while their guards got organized for a renewed trip before the group headed back out for a walk to the Iasoni's skyport. Eli had mentioned prior to his departure that he would try to appear in the residence's great hall, where his magical weapon was hanging, since no. Out for a walk to the Iasoni's skyport. Eli had mentioned prior to his departure that he would try to appear in the residence's great hall, where his magical weapon was hanging, since some sort of disruption kept his gateways from working inside Galdish. The man's personal guards and Commander Malatia were already stationed there, and Dara would have called them for an update, but Artificer Virod was still working on the communication matrix for Eli's new Farspeaks. Thankfully, the Iasoni's section of Galdish was proving relatively Thankfully, the Iasoni's section of Galdish was proving relatively calmer than other areas, and Dara's trips through the streets to the city gatehouse proved uneventful. The short walk along the stone path up to her The short walk along the stone path up to her family's private skyport was similarly. Cut in here. The short walk along the stone path up to her family's private skyport was similarly peaceful, the guards in dark armor patrolling the nearby grounds doing a good job of keeping trouble at bay. Oh God, there it is. Okay. Feeling good. Where is this? Dark armor patrolling the nearby grounds, doing a good job of keeping trouble at bay. We're actually going to come right here. Doing a good job of keeping trouble at bay. The two women doing a good job of keeping trouble at bay. The two women had to go through multiple identity doing a good job of keeping trouble at bay. The two women had to go through multiple identity doing a good job of keeping trouble at bay. The two women had to go through multiple identity verifications while passing through the skyport, the last by a foursome of guards in gray armor standing at the residence's main doors. The warriors' expressions were professionally neutral, yet their fluttering auras revealed their worried minds. Malatia was waiting for them at the auras revealed their worried minds. Malatia was waiting auras revealed their worried minds. Malatia was waiting for them at the Great Hall's main entrance, where she informed them about Eli's weapon suddenly vanishing hours ago. Given the timing, it seemed to match up closely with when Dara felt the connection with Eli strengthen, so he had likely encountered some trouble soon after his return to Lura. Everyone in the Great Hall worked for Eli. Encountered some trouble soon after his return to Lura. Everyone in the Great Hall worked for Eli in some capacity, making all the apprehension in the room quite understandable, but Dara was unwilling to reveal their ongoing connection. Instead, she covertly informed Malatia and Barrack that Eli had returned to Lura, and while their lord's presence remained distant, Dara sensed no pain or discomfort from any sort of injury. Let's do... Presence remained distant. Dara sensed no pain or discomfort from any sort of injury. Malatia had been running her people through some... Pain or discomfort from any sort of injury. Malatia had been running her people through some sparring drill. Oh, come on. Pain or discomfort from any sort of injury. Malatia had been running her people through some sparring drills to keep everyone distracted from their worries, reasoning that whatever trouble Eli had encountered, he might need his warriors ready. Dara thought that was an excellent idea, and she was happy to watch as they started up again on the nearby... Dara thought that was an excellent idea, and she was happy to watch as they started up again. Dara thought that was an excellent idea, and she was happy to watch as they started up again on the nearby training mats in hopes... As they started up again on the nearby training mats in the hopes of... As they started up again on the nearby training mats in the hopes of burying her own concerns. Mary kept Dara company, standing beside her while they observed the matches, yet even with her friend's presence, she couldn't help worrying. Eli had been delayed before, but that was before he learned to form a gateway, which made his continued absence all the more troubling. A sudden bright light drew Who? Continued absence all the more troubling. A sudden bright light drew Dara's gaze over to the other side of the great hall, where a familiar white rectangle was now shining on the room's back wall. A person's dark silhouette was standing in front of the gateway, holding something large across their shoulders, but even with the illumination behind them concealing their features, Dara already knew who it was, as she now sensed Eli's firm determination, followed by his relief. The gateway's bright light winked out, revealing Eli wearing his usual gray and black combat attire, while holding a tall person across his shoulders. "Hey, everyone," the man called warmly. "Sorry for worrying you, but I ran into a little trouble on the way back to Galdish." Eli crouched, turning slightly. "Royn, Daphne, if you could help me out," he prompted, and the two guards moved to take the limp form off his shoulders. Dara smiled, hurrying forward, even as her gaze took in the man being... Couldn't scroll fast enough. Moved to take the limp form off his shoulders. Dara smiled, hurrying forward, even as her gaze took in the man being held between Royn and Daphne, his distinctive facial features hinting at what had happened. "Was it the same Thward settlement?" Dara asked, looking at Eli. "Yeah, Silverhome," the man replied, his lips thinning with anger. "Thward settlement?" Dara asked. "Thward settlement?" Dara asked, looking at Eli. "Yeah, Silverhome," the man replied, his lips thinning with anger. "Malatia, is this room secure?" The blonde woman in gray armor saluted with a fist. "Malatia, is this room... Come back a little bit. Malatia, is this room secure?" "Malatia, is this room secure?" The blonde woman in gray armor saluted with a fist to her chest. "It is, my lord." "Good," Eli acknowledged with a brisk... Come on. Her chest. "It is, my lord." "Good," Eli acknowledged with a brisk nod before waving a hand at the unconscious Thward. "That's Truthholder Carfer, who you might remember..." Before waving a hand at the unconscious Thward. "That's Truthholder Carfer, who you might remember as one of the 3 warriors who escorted me to their land's border following my last trip away from Lura. Well, when I showed up there again earlier today, the town had just recently been seized by people who I can only assume were from the Association." An angry growl swept through the gathered warriors, and Dara felt her own emotions rising at hearing that organization's name. She had never been a strong believer in the darkness or the fallen, thinking them fanciful tales like so many of the stories from her childhood, but her opinions had quickly shifted beneath the growing pile of evidence surrounding the Association and its nefarious activities upon Lura. Rather than come straight back here, I decided to scout the situation. Eli, okay. Nefarious activities upon Lura. Rather than come straight back here, I decided to scout the situation, Eli continued in a lower tone, his expression turning grim. I found a lot of dead thwards, along with two his expression turning grim. I found a lot of dead thwards, along with two exceptionally strong individuals, much like the peak threat outside Pallium, which was a lot more than I wanted to handle on my own. The man frowned, shaking his head. But then I saw one of them finish draining the vitality out of a prisoner, much like what Baruta did to Tonka. So I decided to act. Dara grimaced, her heart aching as she remembered the last time she saw her teacher, just minutes before Tonka's battle with Baruta Dunmaru. Was this okay? Tonka's battle with Baruta Dunmaru. Was this when you summoned your war staff? Malatia asked, gesturing toward the empty hooks attached to the back wall. Yeah, right in the middle of the fight. The empty hooks attached to the back wall. Yeah, right in the middle of the come on. Empty hooks attached to the back wall. Yeah, right in the middle of the fight, Eli replied, and the metal-capped weapon appeared in his hands as if to emphasize the point. By the end, both peak threats were dead, and the town was once again in the Thward's hands, but the locals had suffered a lot of casualties along the way, so I offered to help them out before coming back to Galdish. Many happy murmurs and proud expressions sprouted among the gathered warriors, as a victory over such powerful foes was something to be celebrated, yet Dara could feel Eli's anger still rumbling in the back of her mind. I spent some hours healing their wounded and then took a break for a meal with Carfer here, Eli continued, his weapon vanishing as he nodded toward the unconscious Thward. We were having a nice conversation, and... Okay, got to... Seems pretty good here. We're going to make this cut here and listen. Yeah, right in the middle of the fight, Eli. Cool. Maybe we'll do like that. Yeah, right in the middle of the fight. It's fine. We're going to take a short stretch pause. Hell, I might even stand up, walk out in the studio for a second. Yeah, we're going to do that. We'll put you briefly on the BRB screen. All right. We're back. It's important to take breaks, my friends. You got to take some breaks. Not only for stretching, keeping limber, but for me, in this booth, it's about just getting a breath of fresh air, as fresh as it is out in the studio, but just get out there, bend a little bit, move around. You'll come back feeling like $1 million. Or at least $250 per finished hour. All right. Let's see here. This edit we did back here, that's good to go. Probably starting right here. Let's see where we are.
He nodded toward the unconscious Thward. We were having a nice conversation.
Yep. Yep, we're still good here. Audio. I did unmute myself, so we're good to go there. All right, we should be still pretty good to go. I just had a thought. I wonder, in OBS, can you sidechain compression? Let me look at this real quick. A little dangerous to do while the stream's live. No, I don't want that. Where is filters, compressor? There is a sidechain. Oh, snap. Okay. Next stream, my friends. We're gonna have sidechain compression set up so that when I have Pro Tools armed, right now, no chorus effect, no doubling, no oddness there. But when I arm it, you're getting a chorus effect that gets turned into like a delay effect when I've got the mouth declick active when I'm getting ready to export something. But I think, so you still want to be able to hear the pre-roll. And you want to be able to hear regular playback. But I think if I set up another layer of compression on this microphone, only in OBS, and I sidechain, no, it'll be a compressor on the loop back, and I'm going to do a sidechain compression, sidechaining off of this microphone, which should be perfect sidechain compression. Yeah. The tech that's coming through. We're doing live mix engineer logistics chat right here on the stream here. Let's get back to work here. We're at, where am I? 25 minutes. We are halfway? Approximately halfway through the chapter. Let's finish this bad boy up.
As he nodded toward the unconscious Thward. We were having a nice conversation.
Where is that? Yeah. Okay, here we go.
As he nodded toward the
Unconscious Thward. We were having a nice conversation, and I'd even talked him into swearing an oath of silence. But soon after, the man suddenly passed out, Eli explained with a smile, yet there was no humor in his eyes. It was about then... It was about then that I realized our food had been laced with a powerful sedative, so I left immediately, taking Carfer with me, which is when I showed up here. Dara shared an incredulous look with Mary as gasps and hissed curses filled the air. You... Okay, Malatia is talking. And hissed curses filled the air. You defeated the Thward's and hissed curses filled the air. You defeated the and hissed curses filled the air. You defeated the Thward's foe. Oh my God. Hissed curses filled the air. You defeated the Thward's foes, saved their town, and healed their wounded, yet they balanced this debt by trying to capture you? Malatia asked, her eyes narrowing on the unconscious man. Have they no honor? Dara had to wonder the same, as Uncle Klokta generally spoke highly of the Thwards, especially their fierce ideas on personal honor, but now she didn't know what to think. Eli shook his head. This could have been one of them acting independently, so I'm not about to make any blanket statements about the Thwards. Still, this also means their people have fallen far down on my list of priorities, so I don't plan on wasting a lot more time on them. Malatia gestured toward the unconscious Thward. What did you wish done with this one? She asked in a neutral tone. I'd like to... This one, she asked in a neutral tone. I'd like to question Carfer, but... This one, she asked in a neutral tone. I'd like to question Carfer, but that can wait for later, Eli replied, looking at Dara. Are there any restrictions against bringing him in... Eli replied, looking at Dara. Later, Eli replied, looking at Okay.
Eli replied,
Looking at Dara. Are there any restrictions against bringing him into
Eli replied, looking
at Dara? Are there any restrictions against bringing
later. Eli replied, looking
at Dara? Are there any restrictions against bringing him into Galdish with us? I can keep him asleep for a few more hours, and I'd like to have Wolf there for our chat, assuming he's available. Dara felt a smile tugging at her lips. When the guards at this... Dara felt a smile tugging at her lips. When the guards at the city gate ask... Dara felt a smile tugging at her lips. When the guards at the city gatehouse ask, you can truthfully claim this thwart as your guest, she advised dryly. I will contact my father to join us for this conversation. Yeah, I gotta redo that. As your guest, she advised dryly. I will contact my father to join us for this conversation. Works for me, Eli chuckled agreeably. Works for me, Eli chuckled agreeably. Malatia, I'll want you there, and Mary, I'd appreciate your help as well. Yeah, I read that right. Mary, I'd appreciate your help as well. Mary, Jesus, what have I done? Mary, I'd appreciate your help as well. Mary blinked in startlement, though she was quick to nod. By your strength. Dara's smile grew at seeing her efforts bearing fruit, as she had just been... She had been... The smile grew at seeing her efforts bearing fruit, as she had been suggesting they involve The smile grew at seeing her efforts bearing fruit, as she had been suggesting they involve Mary in more important matters beyond just teaching, since she was their most experienced RX specialist. All right, it sounds like we have a plan. Nope. Their most experienced RX specialist. All right, it sounds like we have a plan, Eli announced, waving a hand toward the door. Let's head home. ... For anyone watching this whole damn video, I just said ... That is so that later, when I'm editing, I have a visual cue. I'm also going to start the next recording take right in the middle of this. That's a visual cue. That's never going to happen naturally in the course of any narrating. Not at that volume. Spacing, I always say ... just like that. This lets me know that this is a chapter break. Here in the chapter, there are 3 asterisks. This is going to be a change in time, setting, or point of view. Proper chapter break here. So when I come to edit, what I'll see on the other side of this ... is ... Here is more text because now I'm beginning the rest of the chapter. So when I'm editing, when I see this ... with silence directly on the back of the other side, it doesn't look like any of these other edit points. This edit point, immediately after the cut, there's audio because I was doing punch and roll. Rolled from this audio into the new recording take. Every single other cut, every single one, there's audio directly after the cut. Just every single one of these. Look at that. Audio directly after the cut. Only in this one, only in this case, this is the only case where audio does not directly follow the cut. So even if I said the ... maybe I went ... Even that, this would be a dead giveaway that this is a chapter break. So what I'll do when I'm properly editing, and I'll show you right now what I'm doing. I'm zoomed into this level when I'm editing. That makes the ... that much easier to see. So I'm hitting tab, and I'm doing my tab, click and drag, tab, click and drag. And then I hit tab, and I get to here. Instantly, I recognize that as a chapter break. I grab from here to here. I hit paste. This is a 2-second bit of room tone. That way, I have a perfectly consistent 2-second gap in every chapter break in every book that I do. It's been consistent for at least 30 books. I've been using this exact method for at least 30 books, if not 35, 40 books. This is something I've been doing for a while. So this is what works for me. Find out what works for you. We'll go back to here and we'll just record and then we'll keep going. Okay. after the chapter break. Here we go. Eli leaned back in the comfy leather chair, his eyes on the person pretending to still be unconscious on the nearby couch. The past several hours had been busy as he walked home and started getting up to speed on events while he was away from Galdish, but now it was time to address an unresolved problem. Carfer, you aren't starting this conversation off well by trying to deceive me. It's funny. Starting this conversation off well by trying to deceive me, Eli calmly pointed out. You do remember I'm a healer, right? I can see your brain's activity, so I'd recommend a quick reassessment of your situation. The form lying on the couch finally stirred as Carfer smoothly rose into a sitting position, his eyes scanning the small suite and the audience watching him. I've asked some trusted people to observe this chat of ours, Eli explained, waving a hand to his left, where Dara and Mary were standing with neutral expressions. Then he gestured in the other direction, where Malatia and Wolf, the pair's feelings hidden well behind their inscrutable visages. The other direction, where Malatia and No, I just read that wrong. Were standing with neutral expressions. Then he gestured in the other direction toward Malatia and Wolf, the pair's feelings hidden well behind their inscrutable visages, though the older man had his hand resting casually beside his baggy jumpsuit's oversized belt buckle. They don't speak Silverleaf, but if they sense that you're lying to me, I'll have to assume you were involved in what happened. Yeah, that's fine. In what happened, Eli warned in the same placid tone. Carfer's brows pulled together in a scowl. I do not understand what you hope to gain from taking me captive. Carfer's brows pulled together in a scowl. I do not understand what you hope to gain from taking me captive, the man said in nearly a snarl. But my masters will never agree to work with you after this. Eli snorted, figuring the powerful sedative had left Carter a little befuddled. You might want to think back to the last thing you remember, Eli suggested, leaning forward to touch a hand to the low table in front of him. Here, let's see if we can jog your memory, he said, and Carfer's mostly empty bowl appeared, followed by Eli's own bowl of stew, then his untouched mug of beer, and what was left of their 2 loaves of bread. Does that help? Carfer's eyes widened, staring at the evidence atop the table's surface, only for the man's gaze to narrow, his lips pursing. Eli waved a hand at the remains of their meal. I'm sure you can imagine how this looks, he continued in an even tone, having a tight rein on his temper. Let's read that. He continued in an even tone, having a tight rein on his temper. I'm curious. I'm curious about what you were planning on doing after knocking me unconscious. Was it going to be an interrogation, a little torture, maybe just a nice and clean execution? Without me ever waking up. Carfer's face had gone slightly pale as his omniscience sparkled with activity, but not enough to be threatening. I swear on my honor that I knew nothing about this contemptible act, the man growled, shaking his head in disgust. Nothing at all? Nothing at all? Eli asked, not bothering to hide his skepticism. Carfer took a deep breath, his expression settling a little. If required, I will swear by the greater system that I was not involved in tampering with our food or in any way planning your capture, he said, unflinchingly meeting Eli's gaze. If the other man was lying, Eli couldn't detect it, so he looked over to Dara. If the other man was lying, Eli couldn't detect it, so he looked over to Dara and Mary. Carver is... Jesus. So he looked over to Dara and Mary. Carver is claiming no knowledge of drugging our meal, he explained in Northmarch. Thoughts? Dara's brows burrowed. I did not detect any falsehoods, yet there might have been something, she murmured, glancing over at Mary. The dark-haired woman gave a slight nod. This Thward believes his words, but his spirit quakes with shame and suspicion, His spirit quakes with shame and suspicion, Mary explained in a soft voice. I have encountered such a combination of emotions before, making me think this Thward has some knowledge of who is responsible. Eli had pretty much guessed the same, as Silverhome wasn't too big of a town, and the list of suspects couldn't be large, especially since someone must have provided Carver with the drugged food. Eli's gaze slid over to Wolf and Eli's gaze slid over to Wolf. Eli's gaze slid over to Wolf and Malatia. Their expressions. Pause for bubbles. Oh boy. Nice. Provided Carver with the drugged food. Drugged food. Eli's gaze slid over to Wolf and Malatia, their expressions still devoid of any emotions. What do you think? This Thward has the unwitting... I have to remember how... Wolf is a major character, and I have to remember how I read him. He's basically just like gravel. He's just like, but he's a good guy. He's Wolf. Emotions. What do you think? This Thward was the unwitting tool of another, Wolf replied, a hint of derision curling his lips. The older man had arrived not too long ago and surmised much the same after sniffing the evidence in his Volk form, confirming the beer was tainted with something that would incapacitate a human. Malatia wasn't so quick to answer, staring silently at Carver for a few more seconds. The Thwards are not known to mask their feelings well, and I do not detect any particular deceptions from this one, she said, her brows furrowing. Be that as it may, this Thward is also the first living example of their people I have ever encountered, which makes me leery of any certainty about their normal demeanor. Eli figured that made sense. Eli figured that made sense, but it wasn't enough to worry him as he turned to Carver, still sitting expectantly on the couch. The man's expression had turned neutral again, bearing up reasonably well while others discussed his honor or lack thereof. All right, Carver, I'm willing to believe you're innocent, which means you have a couple of options available, Eli explained, and made a swirling gesture to indicate the small suite. Your first choice is to stay here as my guest for a few days while I get some work done, but after, I'll escort you to Minal's Redoubt, and from there you can find your own way to Silverhome. Eli waved a hand toward the suite's door and the stick figures standing. There you can find your own way to Silverhome. Eli waved a hand toward the suite's door and the stick figures standing in the hallway beyond. That would mean putting up with a couple of guards who will keep you company while you're within my home. Still, you're not my prisoner, so your other choice is to leave, but once you step foot onto the streets of Galdish, you're on your own. Carver's thick brows rose. We are in the squatters' lands? The man asked, taking another look around the room. We are in the squatters' lands? The man asked, taking another look around the room. Are in the squatters' lands? The man asked, taking another look around the room in astonishment. How long was I asleep? Eli couldn't help but grin. Several hours, he replied, and chuckled as the Thward's eyes widened even more. I told you I had a fast way of getting around. Don't say getting. Thward's eyes widened even more. I told you I have a... Thward's eyes widened even more. I told you I had a fast way of... Thward's eyes widened even more. I told you I had a fast way of getting around. Carver leaned forward, staring intently. If I have your permission to share such details with certain individuals, I believe your desired meeting would happen far sooner. It's too much. Too much. Details with certain... Carver leaned forward, staring intently. If I have your permission to share such details with certain individuals, I believe your desired meeting would happen far sooner. Eli's amusement faded as he shook his head. Carver, after what happened, I'm no longer interested in working with your people. I'll escort you home, but unless something major changes, that'll be the last time you see me. Carver's expression grew troubled, and his... That'll be the last time you see me. Carver's expression grew troubled, and his gaze dropped to the low table between them. Diadar, please do not hold the rest of my people responsible for the actions of a few despicable individuals. I promise on my honor to pursue those responsible for this crime, he said in a... To pursue those responsible for this crime, he said in a fervent whisper. That's your choice to make, Eli replied, unmoved. I have a feeling you grasp the stakes we're playing at here, and whether your others are involved with the association, I'm not going to risk me or my people with a shaky ally. Eli got up from his chair, preparing to leave, and gestured for everyone to stay calm when Carver rose as well. Wolf had flipped his belt buckle's catch, his body blurring for a moment, though he remained in his human form. As I mentioned earlier, I'm going to... Though he remained in his human form. As I mentioned earlier, I'm going to be busy, so we might not meet again until it's time to take you home, Eli continued in a more professional tone. We might not meet again until it's time to take you home, Eli continued in a more professional tone. Your guards can escort you around the premises, but be aware some areas are strictly off-limits. Any failure to follow their directions or otherwise jeopardize the safety of my people will mean rescinding your guest status, and appropriate actions will then be taken. Is that understood? Carver's lips thinned, but the man nodded. My thanks for your hospitality, he acknowledged in a strained voice. Boom. That's it. Chapter 7 done. Take this out of my earballs. All right. I think we're just gonna mark this down at 42:33. Hoo boy. How funny that for the stream. This is such a fun and strange consequence of what's the observing a phenomenon. The observation of a phenomenon affects it. I've recorded many chapters at this hour of night, but man, recording chapters while streaming, that's the way to go. Just for some reason, even if there are 0 people watching the stream, which I believe has been the case for most of this evening's stream, and that's fine. There's the VOD, there's the YouTube, which sort of lives in perpetuity, so if anyone is watching this in the future, I am getting to a point here that you might find useful someday. Whether the audience is physically there or not, I've got this camera in my face, and I know that someday someone might be watching this, and so I'm feeling a more personal connection. I do feel like a storyteller versus when it's just when the camera isn't off and I've got like a little foam insert so that the glass from I've got a little teleprompter thing. I've got a little foam insert so that it completely blocks any audio reflections from that, and that obviously just obscures my eyesight from the camera. So when I'm recording off stream, mentally, it is just me in front of a microphone reading. But when I'm recording the stream, whether there are 0 or 5 billion people watching, that sense of audience is there, and so the storytelling, I do feel, becomes a bit more real. So I think, so long, Beefy Clint, you can piss off. All right, you are... way to unmake my point. Got it. Hello. Maybe I can just do it in OBS. Ban. Nice. Get banned, idiot. And then can we... Okay. It's not clearing out on that. The point I'm making, which was just made to feel silly. Yeah, the storytelling aspect does become real when I'm streaming. So I think I will try to do narrating on stream when it makes sense. I've been given explicit permission from this author to narrate live on stream. The edit, though, I go slower. So editing is something I'm generally, I'm quite fast at it. But because I'm yapping the whole time, my edit goes slower. So maybe maybe it's like for every 5 chapters I narrate on stream, I'll only edit like 1 chapter just to show like, hey, this is what punch and roll editing looks like. I don't know. It's an interesting little side effect of just the observation effect. But all that to say, we are good to go. We have done what we set out to do, and that is narrate 2 chapters. We edited a couple chapters as well. We produced, what is this? What is this? This here is, I'd say we produced nearly a finished hour of audio during this stream, which is great. 1 finished hour of audio per day is sort of like, boom, that's my just daily goal for productivity. Jimmy, are you saying you only work 3 hours a day? No. I got so many other irons and so many other fires. If I can get that done, that means I can do other stuff and not fall behind in my audiobook work. I'm going to need to play some catch up because I've had some lazy days where I haven't gotten done what I needed to get done on audiobook work, and I've been focusing on other work too much. So, in the coming days, I'm going to try to get, 3 chapters read. If I can do 3 chapters a day for 5 days in a row, I'll be back on track to where I can chill out a little bit more. It looks like later in the book we've got some shorter chapters, and that'll make things glide a little bit more. We got some long chapters up front here. We've got an hour long. Ooh, buddy. So yeah, I want to thank anybody for watching this now or in the future. If you are watching on YouTube, the sort of dichotomy of Twitch versus YouTube is that Twitch, ain't nobody comes back and to watch Twitch videos later. But YouTube is sort of like, that's kind of what it's for. YouTube isn't so much meant for live. But this lives on in the live archive that I got on YouTube. So if you watch this at any time in the future and you've got a question about something that you've seen in this video, leave a comment and I get a notification for that, and I will respond to comments a million years in the future. I will never die. I will always be here answering your questions. So, yeah, feel free to ask a question whenever. But for the moment, that means we, my friends, are done for the evening. Thank you for stopping by if you did so. If not, that's okay. We'll see you sometime in the future, and we'll see you next time. We'll definitely be recording tomorrow, and given how well I narrated during this stream, I feel like I want to keep it up. I want to keep narrating during the stream. So I plan in my heart, I'm planning right now on streaming tomorrow, but you know what? Maybe it doesn't happen. But we'll see you again at some point anyway. My name is Jimmy Moreland with Veteran Audio. Head over to veteranaudio.com where you can pay me money to read for you. Sounds a little weird, but that's the deal. Love you, bye.